To our program, I'm Ginger Casey. In the 6 years since crack cocaine first appeared in New York City, it has crossed all racial barriers and affected communities from coast to coast. This is it, crack cocaine. To users, crack is the ultimate high. To drug counselors, the ultimate obstacle. It's one of the most addictive drugs ever. Today, our prisons are jammed with crack users, our courts backlogged with their cases. Families have been shattered, lives lost, and a whole new generation is growing up in crack shadow. We're here to shed light on that shadow tonight. For the next 2 hours, we'll be doing something unique in television. We'll not only discuss the impact of crack cocaine on the nation's African-American community, perhaps more importantly, we'll bring together people in programs we believe are leading the way out of the crack crisis. This is Glide Memorial Church's second conference on crack's impact on the black family. Last year's theme was the death of a race. Our program tonight is about rebirth, a theme my co-host, the Reverend Cecil Williams, has made his life's work. And Cecil, I'm sure you're very upset today with the statement from drug czar William Bennett suggesting that children from bad neighborhoods should be taken out of the areas and put in orphanages. He's saying it's the children face no future because they have no positive influence in their lives.
Thank you, Ginger. I know that I'm not the only one who's upset. I'm sure that members of the conference who are attending this week have also become upset. We want Mr. Bennett to know that we are not going to give up our children. They belong to us, and we can, in fact, take care of them. What we're going to do is put our feet in the street. We're going to start marching again. We're going home to the public housing projects. We're going to the mix. That's where people sell and use and abuse. We're going to go to the mix. We're going to go where our people are, and we're going to embrace them. We're going to approach them and let them know that we're coming home, and they're coming home. We're going to take care of our families. We're going to make sure that we don't lose any more of our children. We're here to save the children and not lose them. That's what this conference is all about, and certainly we are here tonight to open up the possibility of all of us being informed about models and directions that we can take so that we can, in fact, have a rebirth of the race.
Well, let's start out by finding out more about crack cocaine. Dr. Benny Prim brings 27 years of experience to this epidemic. He is the president of the Urban Resource Institute in Brooklyn, New York, a drug treatment center, and the director for the Office for Treatment Improvement for the federal government. Now, Dr. Prim, this is the stuff, about $13,000 worth of it. What is it, and why is it so dangerous?
Well, certainly this is probably one of the most addictive drugs known to man. As a matter of fact, when smoked, it gets to the brain within 7 to 10 seconds, and sometimes even less, depending upon the circulation. It's highly addictive. It's short-acting, which means that people have to repeat the smoking of it continuously to stay high. And then when they get high, the high is so high that they need a parachute drug to come down on. That parachute drug generally is one of the sedative hypnotics, which means it's alcohol or heroin or barbiturates or one of those drugs.
So there is the likelihood that someone on crack is also taking other drugs.
Absolutely. So it poses a multiple problem for us. And generally, about 30% of these people have some mental disorder also. So there is a coexisting diagnosis that creates a great problem for us in the treatment field.
Okay, Dr. David Smith is the founder of the San Francisco Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, one of the country's foremost experts on the medical effects of crack cocaine. Now, Dr. Smith, you've told me before this is a drug with no ceiling. Now, what do you mean by ceiling?
Cocaine, particularly cocaine administered in a rapid delivery system, has a very profound impact on the chemistry of thinking, and it's a very reinforcing drug. The more you use, the more you want, and there's no upper level limit to tolerance. Studies, for example, with animals in which the cocaine has been self-administered, the animal will take the cocaine over their desire for food, sleep, sex. They'll push the cocaine button until they die. So in this context, the compulsion and addicting properties with cocaine are so intense that there is no upper level of tolerance. It also produces a very profound alteration in the chemistry of thinking. As Dr. Prim indicated, it has this profound impact on the brain so that the individual becomes paranoid, they have hallucinations, they see things that aren't there, hear things that aren't there, and it also decreases impulse control so that the individuals are more prone to violence. So it's a very addicting and a very dangerous drug.
Okay, Dr. Smith, the bigger question is why this drug is having such a tremendous impact on the African-American community. Cecil.
Your Ginger, we have here tonight also Mr. Michael Luckett, who is a clinical psychologist and founder and director of the East Oakland Sanctuary. Michael, who's doing crack and why?
8 to 80 intellectuals to illiterates, blind, crippled, crazy. Everybody is doing crack cocaine. It has crossed all lines, all barriers. No one is immune from this seductive drug.
Thank you very much. I see, come here, Walter Redding, you're right here. You tell us also, you come from the streets, you've been out there, you know what's going on. Who's using this drug and why?
Everybody's using the drug and everybody has their own reasons for using it. In my case, I used it to check out so I could sell to other people. I'm an ex-dealer and a recovering addict. Other people use it for other reasons.
Thank you very much.
You know, this raises the question of whether the criminal justice system is the answer to this problem. Traditionally, we've relied on courts and prisons to be part of this solution. Mr. John Burris is a defense attorney. Is the criminal justice system working in this case?
Absolutely not. The criminal justice system does not have the capacity to address itself to the issues that are confronted by crack cocaine. Since the crack has become such an epidemic, we have, in fact, the system itself increased in terms of 3.5 times the number of people that are locked up now than there were 7.5 years ago. What we essentially find is that people are on a track. The police department, none of the local agency can address themselves to the real effects of it. At best, we can do is lock people up. When we lock them up, we've passed laws now where they get longer, tougher sentences. They can go away for an extremely long period of time. But the system itself cannot handle the massive volumes of cases. And essentially, the criminal justice system has failed. It is not the place where you can address and correct the effects of crack cocaine.
What has been the strain on the backlog of court cases?
The backlog essentially has resulted from the massive number of cases that we have. Police arrest large numbers of people. I would suspect that in some cities they arrest 3 to 4 times as many people as they did 10 years ago. But every time you arrest someone, you then put them in the criminal justice system. There's not enough judges, there's not enough lawyers, there's not enough prosecutors to handle them. And once you then send them off to jail, that doesn't really correct the problem, because ultimately when these people are released, they cannot find jobs.
Because of the record?
Because of their records. And so in essence, you place these people in a position, even if they try to turn themselves around, that they cannot effectively compete. So in effect, what you've done is you have criminalized a large race segment of the population, and you effectively have rendered them unemployable for the rest of their lives.
Well, many of these people are committing criminal acts in addition to doing the drugs, are they not?
Well, large numbers of them are. I mean, when you get down to it, the crack cocaine is, if you're basically poor, and many of the people who use cocaine are, but although there's some statistics that suggest that it's not the black people that use the large quantity of cocaine. It's in fact, it is 80% of the cocaine is used by the white population.
That's right.
Unfortunately, that the large percentage of law enforcement activity is centered on the black community, mainly because it's easier to catch people on the street. It's the easiest way to make a bust. You increase your statistics. But the real users, the people who are transacting the large volumes of cocaine, are not people that the law enforcement agency has addressed itself to. So in effect, the police have utilized and put their greatest resources on the black community and have failed to really address itself to those people who are actually who are creating the demand. The criminal justice system cannot effectively impact upon the demand nor the supply. And until that happens, it cannot effectively in any way address itself to the real problems associated with crack cocaine.
Well, we're not just talking about lawbreakers here. We're talking about essentially drug addicts. And we need to look at what part addiction is playing in criminal activity. Cecil.
Dr. Daryl Inaba is from the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic here in San Francisco. Dr. Inaba, can addicts mentally get off of crack cocaine?
Yes, addicts can get off of cocaine, but you have to understand that when addicts are actively practicing disease, addiction robs them of their choice. They don't have a choice of whether they're going to use or not use. The chemical causes dramatic changes in brain chemistry, and as the brain chemistry changes, The drug, rather than giving you a euphoria, the high, the stimulation, all the wonderful thing it does, it begins to produce the opposite: paranoia, depression, irritability. You get more and more morose, and you wonder, why do I do the drug if it's doing these terrible things to me? Well, you do it because addiction robs you of your choice, and as you become addicted, you don't have a choice. You have to use a drug. Once you accept that as a disease and enter into a treatment process like you have here at Glide, and you work with counselors and you work with the recovery support systems around you and extended family, yes, you can recover, and you can recover to a much more better place than you ever were before.
Dr. Naba, a lot of people tell me that they just love it. It's so good. What are they saying?
They're saying that when this drug, they first start taking it, it releases their own brain chemicals that make them feel awake, alert, motivated, confident, gives them every great feeling they had in the world. And it does do that, but it does it for a minute. It does it by stealing your own energy chemicals. It's a false sense of confidence. It's a false sense of pride. And the more you do it, the worse that high becomes, the less it becomes, and the more the side effects and the adverse reactions happen.
Yeah. Deborah Stewart is a person who has been on crack cocaine and now is recovering. Deborah, stand up just a minute and get close to me here. Tell me a little bit about your experience with crack cocaine and what it did to you.
Well, I can say that I heard you say earlier in the program that, it can deal with any level of society. I went from middle class and, literate to like illiterate and irresponsible. And it was a process that took a long period of time for me, and I was pregnant when I was using. What it does, it takes all your reasoning and all your judgment. It takes away all your maternal instincts, and it takes away all your responsibility. And all you want is you crave for more. Mm-hmm. And I found myself in a situation where even when I realized that what was happening to me was not right, I couldn't make any choice. Mm-hmm. All that mattered to me was that I could continue to use.
But you stopped. You stopped, didn't you?
I stopped because I didn't have any more money, and I didn't have any more drugs.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it wasn't a choice that was of my own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Deborah. Thank you, Dr. Daryl Inaba.
And yet 2 of her children died as a result, perhaps, of this drug abuse. John Burris, you defended her. Some people think Deborah Stewart was a murderer.
That is true. In fact, she was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder by the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. It was always my position, though, that this was not murder, that she was a person who was addicted to cocaine, and that she was not entirely responsible for the events that occurred. That essentially the cocaine brought about essentially a miscarriage. One child was stillborn and the other was not. The issue that presented, it seems to me, that she should have been a person who should not have been part of the criminal justice system per se. She should have received treatment. She should have been addressed in a way that she was a person addicted to cocaine.
And yet at the same time, we recognize that alcoholism is a disease, and yet we hold alcoholics responsible when they mow people down with cars if they've been drunk driving.
And they should. And I think that what's happened here is Deborah's case presented questions of individual choice, what kind of rights, if any, or duties or obligations that a pregnant person has with respect to their fetus. And the law was not clear on that. What Deborah essentially was convicted of is that once one child was born, she failed to take the necessary actions that a mother would take.
Did she go back and smoke more crack?
It is after she had one child that was born alive, she continued to smoke cocaine or smoke crack, and she was responsible for what happened to the child as a consequence of her failure to exercise reasonable good faith judgment.
Deborah, what did you do?
Actually, what happened is like everybody's saying, I was smoking crack cocaine. What happens is, again, you lose your reason. And what happens is, again, you're in a position where a lot of fear sets in, and when you're presented with, child protective services, you're presented with being arrested, it's like, usually when a person has gone that far down into the disease, you're basically rebelling against society, and it's like, it doesn't matter at that moment, but when the effects of the drug wear off, It's then like, oh God, what do I do now? You know, and for me, it wasn't presented about, you know, Alcoholics or Narcotics Anonymous or any of the recovery programs. It's just that if you don't take care of your problem, we're going to take your children away from you. So, you know, you're presented with a lot of frustration, a lot of fear, and nowhere to turn. You know, now it's set up where there are facilities for women that are pregnant, that have a drug addiction problem, you know, but no one came to me and said that.
I was going to ask you about being pregnant, of course, and then knowing that you're still on crack cocaine. Nothing there said stop, did it?
Nothing at all. And, you know, all it said was, you know, we're gonna turn you into the authorities. You know, and it's like, well, I don't have any, you know, I can't fight that. I don't have any protection against that. You know, there was nobody there to say to me, there is a way, there's hope. You know, what I needed was support and hope, not threats, you know, and that's what I was presented with. You know, next thing I know, you know, I'm in the hospital after I had surgery, and I'm presented with the fact that I've been arrested for murder.
Yeah.
You
Is
know?
the criminal justice system a deterrent?
For me, you know, I can say that it took what it took for me. You know, I was an addict and an alcoholic for 27 years practicing in my disease. You know, it took what it took for me. You know, the criminal justice system was a process that I had to go through, you know, but I can say I went through the county jail, I went through and served time in the state prison. There was nothing presented there for recovery. It's like, you did wrong and you're going to stay in your cage and you're going to be punished. Yeah. You know, how am I going to get well? What about taking care of the problem? You know, it took for me to come out of prison, take it upon myself to try to find a job. You know, there was no support system to say, okay, now you served your term, you paid your price to society, now let us help you get back on your feet. There was no support system. I had to do it on my own. Yeah. And I'm proud of myself for that.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Just a moment, Cecil. The question gets raised, though. It's one thing if you are going to ruin your own life with drugs. What happens when innocent lives are lost as a result of your addiction? Perhaps your next guest can answer that question.
This is Patricia Ector, who is with the District Attorney's Office here in San Francisco. Patricia?
I think the problem is something that Deborah hit on. You lose all sense of reasoning. What we're finding, a study took place last year between April and June in 16 cities, and the rate of crack or cocaine use and drug use amongst people that were arrested in those 2 months went from a low of 54 to 88%. And so what we're saying is we're having an increase in violent crimes, not only crimes associated with the sale of cocaine, but also associated with the use of cocaine. We're seeing domestic violence where old people are engaging in domestic violence because somehow the male in the relationship is on crack cocaine. We're seeing an increase on people beating up their children because of the paranoia that comes in. I have cases where people stab each other 14 times because someone thinks that someone stole $10. You know, that is the thing where the criminal justice system may not be a deterrent. But what we have to say is, if in fact you use crack cocaine, if in fact you inflict violence upon others, the criminal justice system has to come in and say, we have to remove you. Now, I'm convinced that what we need is education, treatment, as well as strong law enforcement. And we're not going to dent this problem without it.
But it seems as though a lot of people are now saying, Ms. Ector, that the direction the criminal justice system is going in may not be the way to deal with this issue called crack cocaine. And yet I think I hear you saying that it is.
Well, I think one thing that people don't understand is that a lot of us that are in the criminal justice system come from the community. And not only do we practice our work in the criminal justice system, but we're working out in the community. One thing that in San Francisco is happening with law enforcement, we have probation officers, judges, defense attorneys, DAs, and undercover narcotics officers that are going to go into the elementary schools and become mentors. We all have to reclaim our children. It can't be something where we say we've got to have the schools do it, but we've got to go in and say we will not allow our children to become drug addicts, to become involved in the criminal justice system. I'm convinced that unless all of us do it, and if we have the police officers out there protecting the community. You see, now we have the black community coming to us saying, we don't want drugs sold around our schools. We don't want our children involved in this. So we have to go in, and you have to have strong law enforcement.
Okay.
What should be the legal consequences?
If you, in fact, use crack cocaine, and if you, in fact, are caught selling it, using it, or committing violence with that crack cocaine, if it is your first time, you're generally diverted unless you're selling it. Sometimes we're putting people in drug treatment programs. Dr. Benny Prim knows that we don't have enough treatment programs, enough affordable treatment programs, but we're trying to do the best that we can.
Let's go to Lieutenant Reggie Lyles here. What is your opinion at this time? Do you think that what Ms. Ector is saying is the direction we ought to go?
Well, I have to agree with some of the things that she says, of course. There are violent people in our community who we need to be protected from. But on the long range goal, we cannot arrest this problem nor incarcerate this problem. We have to do something in terms of prevention and education, and we shouldn't have the preponderance of the federal dollars going into providing more institutions for incarceration, more police, etc., but putting money into prevention and education. Any law enforcement officer knows, most professional law enforcement officers know that you can arrest 10, 15, 20 people one weekend, and the next weekend you got to come back and arrest the next 10, 15, 20. So for the long range effect, we need prevention and education. But for the short term, my children have to play out in that neighborhood, and I don't want anybody spraying bullets around them.
How has that affected your job, though? How's that affected your job as a cop?
Well, I've been a police professional for 17 years, and I'm proud of the fact that I am, and I know the difference between those who are out there committing crimes, and I'm here to deal with them. Mm-hmm. But I also know the ones that are out there that are trying to do the right thing and live and raise their families correctly, and I'm here to protect them.
Is crack straining the resources of the police department?
Well, yes, because in most cities, it's the #1 problem. Therefore, most of the police services are directed toward that. But just like you're going to always have you're going to have this preponderance of crack dealers and crack users if the supply is overwhelmingly available. Therefore, you'll never have enough police officers.
What are police departments doing together? Are you police departments doing anything together to deal with this issue of crack cocaine?
Oh, definitely. You got all kind of creative things you have. In Berkeley, they do. We have purchased we got an AC Transit bus and a mobile station going around. There are task forces. There are undercover buy operations. There are all types of police operations. But those are short-term remedies just to keep the peace. For the long-range goal, we got to get children at 3rd and 4th grade and tell them that all money is not good money, that you can be a physician and a psychiatrist, or instead of being Michael Jordan or Michael Jackson or some Felix Mitchell, you can be something positive, you can learn, you can develop, you can thrive, and we love you.
Yeah. May I ask this question? Well, go ahead. One more question, Reggie. Do you see a difference in the response of the community as it relates to the police department and law enforcement at this time?
Yes, I do, because we have the people in the community who are coming to us saying, hey, protect us. We'll tell you who's dealing. We'll tell you where the crack house is. We want you to do something about it. But by the same token, those children that are out there, that are on the fringes, everybody does not have to go to jail. We can do some diversion. You know, it amazes me. Every time 4 or 5 brothers get together, they're a gang. But it used to be when 4 or 5 brothers get together, they was boys clubs or the Boy Scouts or the 4-H club or something like that. So, and I think, additionally, the African American community has some responsibility here. First of all, it's our community. Those children are our children. We should not be intimidated about 13-year-old boys. They're our boys. We need to interface with them, tell them how much we love them, and we need to teach them something. Not if they want to learn, because we're telling them they must learn to survive.
Thank you very much.
And that's exactly what's happening. With resources already strained to the breaking point in the war against crack, people are finding that solutions to the drug problem must start where they began, in the streets. And across the nation, people are taking to the streets to take back their communities.
The acronym is BAD, Boston Against Drugs. And several thousand people are just wrapping up a rally at City Hall Plaza where they heard a parade of speakers urging people to say no to drugs. Eyewitness newsman Mike Macklin reports it all began with a march from Copley Square.
Say no to drugs! Say no to drugs!
The march climaxed a weekend of activities aimed at uniting the city's residents in the fight against drugs and violence. Marchers voiced the thoughts that motivated them to take part.
I'm encouraged, and I hope something productive will come of it.
I think it does serve as a deterrent and let, people or children in our area that do have the problem more or less know that it isn't something that they should be indulging in.
It's a good start, and if it starts with the young kids, then we can make it. And read the T-shirt. This is it in a nutshell. Don't believe the hype.
Along the way, the more than 2,000 marchers were joined by the Reverend Jesse Jackson. When they ended their march at City Hall Plaza, the crowd had swelled to almost 8,000, and Mayor Ray Flynn was calling it a huge success.
It's really wonderful for people of every background, every neighborhood of the city, sending out a real clear message.
We are bad. We are Boston Against Drugs. Give it up.
In a stirring speech, the Reverend Jesse Jackson said the fight against drugs is everyone's battle. Jackson warned the crowd not to sit back and expect the government to wage the war alone.
Bennett does not have the budget, does not have the authority, does not have the plan. We cannot fight drugs from White House down, but from your house and my house up. We must drive drugs out of our communities. We must fight drug pushers just like the Klan. Drug pushers are terrorists.
By all accounts, today's march and rally succeeded in getting out the message that Boston's leaders and residents are united in the fight against drugs. What remains is for city and federal officials to collaborate in a way that will give that message real meaning on the streets of the neighborhoods most affected by drugs. At City Hall Plaza, Mike Macklin, TV4 Eyewitness News.
The chants were both chilling and infectious. This crowd of Valencia Gardens tenants and supporters had come to regain control of their community from the grip of alleged drug dealers and users, who, as one marcher complained, had created a living hell.
Lester, it's Cecil. Lester, it's me. Come on. Open up, bro.
This is one of the apartments targeted by Valencia Gardens tenants. This is an alleged crack house. Reverend Williams was greeted by open arms here because some welcomed his efforts to recover this apartment complex.
I want you to come on, get something on real quick. I'm going to walk you down there so the folks can cheer.
But not everyone inside was willing to join the other side.
I ain't here to get you. I ain't here to take you. You stay in there. Stay in there if you want to. I came to get one person.
The real heroes are the tenants of Valencia Gardens, tenants who are angry enough and strong enough to plead for changes.
We in my own house, I couldn't get peace of mind. Sometimes I had to get up and leave.
Others demanded changes.
We don't want to put people out of their houses. We want these people to get into recovery and realize that crack is not what it's about.
And so the recovery of one neighborhood begins, as that very important first step is taken by hundreds of people who care. The hope is this effort will spread and grow beyond the walls of Valencia Gardens. In San Francisco, I'm Greg Edmonds, Channel 7 News.
These residents say 5 years ago, the East 7 Mile Van Dyke area was peaceful. Today, they say it's a war zone. That's why nearly 50 residents took to the streets in a 15-hour marathon march to let the crack dealers know the party is over.
We don't want to get violent. We don't want to do anything to hurt anybody. But, we just want to run them off.
Rantine McKesson is leading the fight. Her life has been threatened by drug dealers. Now her kids sleep in the basement of the family home. McKesson's husband is a Detroit police officer. But she says the crack dealers don't care.
Oh, I've been threatened that an AK-47 was going to be shot up through the front of my house. So when that threat came, yes, I put the kids in the basement.
The residents march down streets like Stockton and Hilldale. Crack cocaine is openly sold on the corners. The residents around here tell me most of the crack customers are not from Detroit. They say they're from the northern suburbs with a lot of money to buy crack cocaine.
They walk here from Warren. They take cabs here from Warren. We see semi-trucks coming on Hilldale to buy crack.
The residents say they're not giving up. The fight has just begun. Al Allen, TV2 Eyewitness News.
And now I have Rantine McKesson standing with me at this time from Detroit, Michigan. Rantine, you, of course, confronted the issue by marching, taking back the streets. What really happened? How did you come about this? What made you move to try to take back your community?
Well, there were rival gangs fighting over turf in my neighborhood, and I was right in the middle of it. And one particular set of boys from one side of our main thoroughfare came over on our side and shot up a house just a block away, not really even a block away, across the yard. And in running away from the shootout, shooting up this house, they ran through my driveway, someone still shooting at him as he was running, and my son, who at that time was only 2 years old, was in the bedroom asleep, and his window was right at the side of the driveway. The next day, a rifle, one of the children on the block, found the rifle behind, in the alley, and pointed it out to a neighbor, and my husband, the neighbor came and told my husband, and he went and got it. But had that child picked that gun up, like so many instances where children innocently pick up guns and someone is killed, we would have had a fatality. I can't stand to see a fatality with any of the 30 kids on my block, because all 30 of them are mine, even though I only have 2. Yeah. And something has to be done before violence, before there's a death. I don't want to know a child that dies.
Has your block changed since the morning?
My block has changed. We are together. We are crack-wise.
Yeah.
We are together. We had a block club party this summer. We're going on an old-fashioned picnic. The phone calls come when they think that some drug activity is nearby. We all have each other's phone numbers, which is something that we didn't have before. I had to go and I had to explain to neighbors, look, we need your phone number. It's not about being nosy, it's about being cautious and looking out for each other, and that's what's needed.
All right. Yeah. Could Julius do that? Julius Wilkerson is from New Orleans and from Velocity house there in New Orleans, Louisiana. Julius, you are dealing with cleaning up the streets. You're dealing with taking back control of your neighborhoods. What are you doing?
We're doing it from a grassroots level by empowering people to be as vicious.
You brought a prop with you, didn't you?
Oh, yes. And relentless as a drug dealer by using the telephone so that they can be safe in their homes. But we can't just lock up all our children. So we teach prevention. And from our standpoint, prevention is not just taking away the drugs, but providing jobs and other things that kids need, like recreation, getting rid of the blight conditions of the community. Intervention by teaching the family members what to do once they recognize there's a problem so they can get their people to treatment. This does enhance enforcement, but we have to bring back that sense of community so that we can be our brother's keeper. And that's in essence what our program does.
How about that, Ginger?
Part of the complexity of the crack problem comes from the fact that in many ways crack has become big business. Dr. Julianne Malveaux is an economist, an author, and a visiting professor at Berkeley. Is crack now an industry?
Absolutely. Even more than that, I think that we need to look at the flows of money through our community and the kinds of alternatives that people are being offered. You can talk to someone who's dealing crack and they will tell you of the thousands of dollars that they're bringing home each week. Contrast that with a minimum wage job where they'll be bringing home pennies. You can talk to people who confront the 12, 15, 40% unemployment rate that faces our black men, depending on their age. Discriminatory hiring practices, as John Burris has mentioned here. If we could do one thing to stop the crack epidemic, in my mind, it would be to purge people's records of drug activity. In the same sense that we say that we don't discriminate against the handicapped, we don't discriminate against people with AIDS, let's not discriminate against people who are recovering. Because we need to give them the opportunity to plug back into the labor market.
Does the money end up becoming as seductive as the drug?
I think so. I don't think there's any place else that a 15-year-old can support his mother who is on welfare. But why is a 15-year-old put in that position? What I'd like to see is the same kind of passion that went into those streets in New Orleans go to our Congress. We spend billions, $300 billion on weaponry. The Congressional Black Caucus has said if we only tax the top 1% by a little bit, we can create 10, 20, $40 billion that we can use to social programs. Our president is cutting social programs this time by $20 billion. That's frightening. Where else then can a young person have such an immediate impact on the status of his or her family?
Many people argue that drug abuse is simply a response to an existing problem. Is that existing problem poverty and despair?
Poverty has been with us for a very long time, and the African American community has been increasingly marginalized in a society that's become very competitive. We bifurcated our economy, creating very few jobs that pay at the top level. Very few new jobs paying $36,000 a year or more. At the same time, in both the African American and in the overall community, you have more people working at poverty wages. That clearly becomes a magnet for drug activity.
One question that's always asked is, would people who are making $1,000 a week selling drugs be willing to give that up for an entry-level job somewhere?
It's not so much would they be willing to give it up. It's not that kind of poll. Either you sell drugs and make $1,000 a day, or you have the minimum wage. What I think we're looking at, because our young people are very rational, is a whole nexus of opportunities. What kind of messages do people get in school? Are they being told that they too can achieve? What kind of messages come in our universities and in our society? Young black men and women need to see that when they work hard, the system works for them. Until we're prepared to put that message out there, we can't talk about criminalizing these drugs.
Cecil?
Yeah. Well, Ginger, I have a young man who gave up selling drugs. Just recently, a young man who came and comes out of a housing project. Alex, you've seen it all, haven't you?
Just about, yeah.
Alex, you made quite a bit of money, didn't you? In making money, what did it make you feel like? What did it do? What kind of power did it give you?
Well, the power I had is kind of like when you're young and you watch an old gangster movie and you see the big boys calling the shots. You want to be just like them and have the kind of things that they have. And so once you realize that you have something that other folks won't, you would tend to start feeling that you have that power and start calling shots on your own. Since my recovery, I found that there's another power, and that's doing good for the people than to do bad. So.
Alex, you gave up making a lot of money now, and you didn't go to McDonald's either, did you? What I'm saying is it difficult to give up making money?
It is, because I feel it's an addiction that's just as addicting as well as using. It takes a lot to do it. It's not something that I decided to do overnight. It took a long time to do it. It took a lot of people being willing to work with me. It took a lot of people being in my corners. It took me getting hurt, injured. It took me going to jail. It took seeing friends of mine around me coming up dead to realize what was going on here, which what I was doing was wasting a lot of time of my life, precious time of my life. And it took all this to realize the flip side of drugs and money, which was love, education, and recovery.
What made you stop, Alex?
What made me stop was I've now got a 17-month-old son, and since I've had him, I see life a lot more serious than what I did before. I used to ask myself all the time, what's the meaning of life? You live, you get old, you die. But now I see the meaning of life is to make life easier for the children. Since I've had him, I see it's not me alone anymore. It's a lot more people involved. It's about getting involved, making things better for the children so they can have a happier life, regardless whether you have fun or not in your time. The main thing is to make sure that they're taken care of and enjoying theirs.
Yeah. Here's another ex-drug dealer, by the way. They've known each other previously, but now they know each other in a new life. How about that? Walter, you gave it up too. What made you give it up?
Realizing the hype that I was selling all of my customers for years that I had also sold myself. Realizing that I also had an addiction, as opposed to putting myself in a ten-upmanship over the vulnerabilities and the weaknesses of people that I was preying on. Realizing that I was more deadly and destructive than the drug itself. I was more corrupt. I corrupted people methodically. I sit back and think tank ways to help destroy people of my own race. I was a traitor to myself, my people, and my family. And a crisis in my life made me realize these things.
Yeah. I gotta ask this because
well, the earth certainly moved on that one.
Women are often the ones that many times pushes prey upon. Am I right about that?
Women were my greatest and most successful prey. I mean, without women, their vulnerabilities, their addiction to the crack, and my weaknesses to use their addictions in my behalf, I wouldn't have been successful at all. I mean, women were my backbone of my business. Without women, there was nothing.
You hear that? You hear that? Okay.
You know, one of the things we hear a lot about is how crack lies to you. Tell us how crack lied to you.
In ingesting crack cocaine and along with receiving money from it, crack told me that I was God. Crack told me that I had no equal. Crack told me I was the personification of the Supreme Being. I didn't suggest these things to myself. Crack suggested these things to me.
Yeah. Let me ask you something else. I've got to get this in. I don't know whether you all know it or not, but you did meet one night, didn't you?
Myself and Alex.
Yeah, and you met with guns, did you not? Yes. Yeah. And both of you are here today, thank God. How about that?
Well, how do you get in there and break the cycle of crack addiction, crack dealing? Dr. Malveaux, what is out there as an alternative?
Well, there are lots of programs that deal, first of all, with further connecting education to the labor market. I think that's one of the keys, is making sure that people who go to school see how it pays off, see that when they do their work, they will get the payoff. I think also lots of community organizations, there are people here who are talking about some of the grassroots work they're doing to turn people around. But I want to caution that even as we look at these programs, we can't lose sight of the federal budget. We can't lose sight of the national priorities that we've set up. We are spending 3 times as many dollars at the federal level now warehousing people as we spend with rehabilitation and education. And we need to turn that all the way around. But I think Gary Malbia, who's out in the audience, is one of the people who has done some things with turning people around. And I've met lots of people during this weekend who have those hands-on programs. While I commend them absolutely on their programs, I want to say at the same time, take some of that energy and redirect our national priorities. As we can't do it alone.
Do many people get into drug dealing thinking they're just going to make some quick money and get out?
Absolutely. A lot of people, I've met people who say, I'm going to do it to get a down payment on my house. I'm going to do it to do this. It's a short-term thing. And then, as the brother said, it lies to you. You think you can find, you get the down payment, now you want to buy the whole house. You bought the house, now you want to buy the block.
Then you want the furniture.
And you get happy.
John Burris, you have something to say to that.
On that particular point, I think that there are a lot of young people who get into it, but one should realize that a person at 24 is an old dope dealer. And he is either dead, in jail, or on their way to jail. But they do not live a long and colorful existence. And they may have a lot of money, but generally they do not have an opportunity to spend that money. What happens often is that their families may receive the benefits of it, but the person who is actively involved in it rarely, if ever, gets a chance to enjoy the benefits of that money. And frequently, as you look at the murder rates or the homicide statistics, you see that the number one killer of black males the number one cause of death for black males between 20 and 24 is homicides. And it's that way basically from 15 to 30. I mean, you're either going to jail or you're going to be killed, and you very rarely, if ever, get a chance to make it to 25 as a free-thinking human being with a long-term future of employment. Even if you don't go to jail, you have 2 or 3 felonies, and therefore you can't really get meaningful employment.
Cecil,
I could just say one quick thing. The other thing is that we've talked about criminalization, but you can get drugs in jail, and we need to be real clear about that.
Cecil, you're talking with some people now who are trying to make a difference in turning this around.
With Gary, because Dr. Melville mentioned his name. Gary, you are from Kansas City. He is a union worker. He has a program. Tell us what some of the things you're doing.
Cecil, in Kansas City, UAW and GM has gotten together and they've developed a program called the Kansas City, Kansas Rebound Center. My job there for GM is I'm a drug counselor for GM. We have felt that we need to give something back to the community. By counseling people there in the plant, we find that the extension of the community comes into the plant itself. Corporate America will have to get itself together, get its head out of the sand, and start saying, we've got a responsibility. They have to start giving back to the community, not just to, but to the black community. We all have an extension back into the workplace, and it's time for us to start giving back.
We've got, Leslie Bishop here, who is with public relations.
We have an earthquake.
Huh?
We're having some tremors here in the audience.
Oh, really? Well, can you just hold it for a minute? let me get caught. This is Leslie Bishop, represents AT&T. And let's get a response from Leslie so that we can cool the tremor right here. There's a tremor right here.
Yes, there absolutely is, Cecil. I think most corporations, at least the larger ones, especially in the Bay Area, understand that they have a responsibility to the community in which they are a citizen. They are a corporate citizen, and as such are affected by the things that are going on in that community. Unfortunately, I think in the case of crack cocaine, there's this erroneous perception that it applies to the black community. And as you know, the corporations are not really predominantly black. As I said, that's an erroneous perception, number one. And fortunately, there are those of us who are black in positions in corporations that are able to bring the message to the corporation.
Yeah, that is fortunate. No doubt about it. Yeah.
One other thing. We are asking other labor unions and corporations to start getting involved with the black community. UAW and General Motors across the country has taken that challenge on to get involved with the communities and start to make some things happen. So you in the communities, you here at this conference, this has been a tremendous conference. I've seen the outpouring of strength and unity from us as black people. We need to take this back to our workplaces as well as our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. Ginger?
Well, of course, in order to get people trained, you have to get them educated. Dr. Shirley Thornton is Deputy of Special Programs for the California State Department of Education. Dr. Thornton, what role should education play in all of this?
Well, the one thing that we've learned is that public schools
Great suit, by the way.
Oh, I love your suit. We planned this. We called each other. The one thing that we've learned is that until educators are able to do the job, which is to teach, we're not going to educate our children. And we look now at the responsibilities we've placed on public education, and we point the fingers at the group that has the least amount of power to solve their own problems. Schools will only be successful when we in our communities want them to be. And to mean that means we have to be involved in those schools. What we're finding is that people are very willing, starting with the Nation at Risk, moving to winning the brain race with the CEO of Xerox, telling us that our nation is at a disadvantage worldwide because of public education. Public education is the one thing African Americans have that will give them the tools to be successful adults. We are allowing public education to be eroded. We're allowing people to tell us our schools aren't any good. We're allowing people to say, yes, go to vouchers, forgetting the fact that if we lose public education, we lose the environment that will really help us educate our own. But what we're learning in our inner cities, remember, superintendents are black, boards are black, large percentages of teachers are black, our communities are black, and yet our children still are not learning. We have to go in as a community and hold everyone accountable, but also give the supports so that our children learn. There's not a pathology in us. We have to educate ourselves.
You're also concerned of that many African Americans who do well move out.
I'm very concerned about the fact that we thought success as an African American meant moving to the hills and leaving our communities. In the olden days, it mattered not what job you had. We all had to return to the same community. Returning to that community as a doctor, as a teacher, as a preacher, we all came to the same neighborhood. And in that environment, we were reminded that there was an extended family, and it mattered not what Mr. Charlie or Miss Ann said, we were black first. We have to go back to that. We have learned that our degrees do not take the hue or the melanin from our skins.
Cecil.
Joe Marshall is the founder of the Omega's Boys Club and also a principal at vice principal at James Lick School. Joe, tell us how can we integrate the family and the school and make sure that young people sense the importance of education?
Well, you know, I want to piggyback briefly on what he said before about the big lie of crack cocaine. And you can't emphasize that enough. It is a lie. It's the biggest lie going on. In fact, I consider it to be the newest form of slavery for African Americans. I mean, it just totally destroys communities. It destroys homes. It brings crime into the neighborhoods. And as Public Enemy says, you cannot believe the hype. And you have to preach that constantly over and over again. And one of the things that we've tried to do, and it takes all aspects of the community, school, the parents, everybody has to become involved in preaching that this is the big lie. And Shirley's right. The whole community has to take upon itself to take care of all of its children. What we've tried to do in the Omega Boys Club is go after the guy that you can't say be helped, the seller, the drug pusher, the guy you see on TV with arrested with the cuffs behind his back, the guy that you say won't give up the $1,000. But what we understood was that what this person is sold is a big hype. And that what he's spoon-fed since the beginning is that happiness is in fast money, happiness is in a Rolex watch or a BMW or all those other things that you see. And what these kids, they go out there and they say, well, I can get it with this money, and they find out that it is the big lie. And armed with the fact that we believe that these young men wanted a way out, they just didn't know how to get out. Right. We decided to bring them together and show them how to get out. And that's what you have to do, is show them how to get out. We deputized them. We brought them together and had them wear shirts. For example, you see it to say, I don't do drugs, and then go out and get their other peers to do the same thing. And they'll do it. You see, you have to believe in the young people that they really want a way out, but you have to show them how to get out. And they'll buy it. You can't be afraid of them. They want it. You have to do it in the schools, in the streets, in the community, and it takes all of us. But you have to believe that the young people want to get out, because they really do.
Kimberly, do young people want to get out?
Yes, they do. I think adults, they really don't understand that it's peer pressure, but not only is it peer pressure, television has a lot to do with it. We have people glamorizing things. Kids have to sell drugs if tennis shoes cost $100. Good
point.
We have to stop believing the hype, start working for ourselves. But as we do try to work for ourselves, it's other people, the powers that be, that don't want to help us. So then we have to make it seem like we dependent on them, but we really do want to work for ourselves, and we are working for ourselves.
Thank you very much. Michael, I'll hold the mic, okay? Let me finish here. Michael, do adults listen to young people?
Adults, okay, first of all, I like to say thank God. But don't clap because it's serious. God is the one. But families, when you talk about the root of the problem, I'm saying families. They don't have any choice because they grew up like us. We are the generation that is losing now. So the families, they like my family. My mother and my stepfather. My father's gone somewhere. Our families are not together. The morals that have been in this world are lost. We have to come together with unity. Because if we don't, you want to die?
Yeah. Okay, Michael. Yeah, come on.
He makes a good point about...
Okay, Joe.
Makes a good point about the family. Since the family is fractured, and if in fact cocaine is taking mothers away, and the family is the way it is, what we have to do is adopt those children as our own. You see, you have to be responsible for every child, whether or not he is yours, and you will have to provide for that child if in fact he's not getting that from home. Now, that is essentially the way all of us were raised. You see, our community helped us raise us, not just our family, but our community. And if we have dysfunctional families, then it is our responsibility to provide for Michael, to provide for Kim, to educate them. And I want to just say that they'll respond. You see, they'll respond when you reach out and give them alternative. That alternative is their brain, education, because they really have a sense of hopelessness. And we've been able to send 60 kids to college in 3 years, many of whom were former dope dealers, many of whom were former sellers, gangsters, because we reached out and said, we will help you get there. That is what you can do to get young brothers away from selling drugs.
Ginger?
Well, as Michael said, we're learning that crack is not just a body and mind problem, that you have to treat the spirit if you want to recover the whole person. And that brings us to Bishop Felton May, the United Methodist Church. What role does the church play in recovery?
The church is of God. Therefore, the church must do the things of God. The God that I serve is a God of justice, a God of liberation, a God of reconciliation, a God that feeds the poor, a God that clothes the naked, a God that houses the poorly housed, a God that visits the prison, a God that brings justice and liberation like the waters coming down like a mighty rushing stream. I felt just a little bit ill at ease being the only clergy person on this panel until I realized that everyone at this panel are people of God. God is in all of us. And so when we do the things of God, we become the church at large, because the church is the body of Christ.
But has the church been in denial about crack cocaine?
The institutional church has been in denial about crack cocaine, but the spiritual church that's a part of individuals has indeed expressed itself. Otherwise, we would not have people here. Otherwise, this particular church, Glide Memorial, would not be doing any of the things that it is doing, because it is the people, led by its pastor, that are doing the things of God.
In talking about the institution of the church, has the institution of the church lost its position as the center of the African American community?
No, it has not. It is indeed the only free entity within the life of the community. The institutional church known as United Methodist has said there is a moral and spiritual deterioration in this nation, not just in the black community, but at every ethnic, social, and political level. What we are experiencing as a black community is writ large in the larger community. When we talk about violence being perpetrated on the streets of our community, we're talking about violence being perpetrated by a government that is indeed adding the stress factors that are causing people to act out the way in which they are acting. If we want a very clear and specific social and social justice system, then we must talk about violence that's being perpetrated by politicians, by our Congress, by our Senate, and by our president, who refuses to address the social justice issues that are affecting all peoples of color in this nation.
Thank you, Bishop. I would like to introduce now Wade Nobles. He is the Executive Director of the Institute for Advanced Study of the Black Family. What impact has crack had on the black family?
See, I think that may be the wrong question. Because,
you got the right one?
Because the issue really is to do two things. One, to understand why humans have family. And second, to put the question of crack cocaine in black families in the context of American society. And we talk a lot about the heroic efforts of individuals to heal themselves, to develop community programs. But the fact of the matter is that it is not an individual or personal problem. It is a systemic problem. And the systemic problem that has impacted on black folk from the very beginning of our being brought here against our will has been white supremacy and racism. And we need to look at, we need to look at how societies control people based upon them not valuing those people. And the same interest that benefited from enslaving us with physical incarceration, the same interest benefits from enslaving us with a drug-addicted incarceration. And so the question, the real question becomes, what are the fundamental values in American society that impact upon the black family's ability to perform its basic functions? And its basic functions are to produce a generation of people who are capable of obtaining those resources that sustain life. That's the economic question, as well as to produce a generation of people who have the understanding and the installation of their own human worth. That's the cultural or the psychological question. And so when you look at drugs, you look at the participation in drugs, the drug dealer has the same value system that Lee Iacocca has, that Bush has, that Donald Trump has. And so when we talk about those values, then we explicate that the problem here is how does a society operate based upon individualism, based upon materialism, based upon greed, based upon power, and then have a people that it disenfranchises and views as having no value, i.e. black folk. It uses drugs to do that.
Amen.
Dr. Benny Prim. Dr. Benny Prim, you worked for Bush. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I think the Office for Treatment Improvement was set up primarily to take the amount of money that we have dedicated to make treatment better in this nation, to look at that problem and to not only make it better, but to use what we have to show this administration and this country that if we improve drug treatment, that indeed what we will do is make things better. And that's my job to do that. I think with ongoing research that we have going right now, that we translate quickly into service delivery as we bring it to the people very quickly. My office is to do that. We're to open up drug treatment programs within prison settings. We're to target critical populations. Those critical populations are adolescents, women who are of childbearing age, certainly families who live in public housing.
But there is the perception that the white administration does not care about a problem that they see as being in the black community. How do you respond to that?
I don't think that's true at all. I don't think an individual like myself would have been chosen to lead this office if we had an administration administration who thought that. I'm not a puppet. Many of the people who sit in this audience have been members of my support group for as long as I can remember. I've been in drug abuse for now 26 years. I was brought there to make a change in the direction of the federal government, to give some leadership in this area to the federal government, not only to blacks, Asians, Native Americans, Hispanic, Mosaic, but of course the white folks at the same time.
Wade Nobles, how do you respond to that?
You see, again, I have to take issue with the question of the line of reasoning. It is not a problem with a white administration not being sympathetic to the drug problems of the black community. It is the fundamental value system of American society that is the problem. Indeed. And that we have to begin to look at that and see if we end up making boogeymans out of Bush or making us puppets because we're trying to do some good, misses the point. The real issue is how do we develop a society that allows a people to express its own vitality and its own viability. And the question for me seems to be that when we look at this culture, American culture, it has always been hostile and antithetical to the humanism that is part of the African cultural perspective. That has been the clash. And so the kinds of things that this government supports in terms of treatment, in terms of prevention, are all good, and you don't use those as an indicator that it is all good. You simply recognize that as the community calls out in pain, the humanity, even in this society, has to respond to that. But the fundamental question for us is how do we, in our families, do what we've always done, which is to maintain our cultural integrity and resist and respond to the issues of oppression and issues of racism. And the programs that we invent have to always have those two twin pillars.
Bishop May?
We talked this morning, or at least I heard this morning, that we would not use an aspirin to cure AIDS. Then why do we use stopgap measures to win a so-called war against drugs? If it is indeed a war, could not the president, as the commanding general or officer of the armies in our nation, nationalize houses, camps, church camps, YMCA camps, every social entity in this nation to provide treatment on demand? We do not need to teaspoon money out in that regard.
The ravages of crack are being felt particularly in those families where grandmothers often serve as the link between generations. Today, in black families torn asunder by crack, more and more grandparents like Orlean Fortson are also taking on the added responsibilities of being parent and guardian for grandchildren whose parents are addicted to crack.
I feel like, just don't feel like I'm all by myself, just me and my baby brother, all in the world by ourselves. Like nobody there to take care of me.
The courts called me and told me they found Monique on Taylor Street in an apartment with a lemon in the refrigerator, and she had been there 5 days. And they had sold all the furniture and everything, and she was sleeping on some clothes. Didn't even have a bed. And she loved her mother so much, she didn't want to turn them in. But she got so hungry, she went to the neighbors, and the neighbors reported it. And I had to go to a home to get her.
When Orlean Fortson was her daughter's age, she raised 4 children by herself. But now, at 54, at a stage in life when most women have time for themselves, Orlean does not. She spent the last decade bringing up her 11-year-old granddaughter, Monique, and her 16-month-old grandson, Stefan. Both are the children of her daughter, Elisa, who's addicted to crack.
You know what I mean? That's what crack does to people, destroys people's lives and with their loved ones, you know. When you lose trust for people, like especially people in your family, and that's about everything. That's the only thing you got is family members. When you lose that, you lose everything.
My granddaughter and my grandson, they need their mother's love. I mean, I take care of them, I hold them, I give them all the care that they need. But then when I get through cleaning them up and feeding them, they want to know where their mother is.
Okay.
For many grandmothers like Orlean Fortson, the psychological stress has taken a physical toll. At San Francisco General Hospital, Sue Trupin, a registered nurse, and her colleague, Dr. Dorian Miller, decided to organize a support group to help the grandmothers cope.
You got too much emotional trauma going on, trying to deal with starting all over with babies again.
A couple of months ago, Orlean began attending weekly meetings of grandparents as parents.
I've gone to the house, and my grandson was lying in the middle of the floor. She's visiting her friends, no one there. My 11-year-old granddaughter had to take care of him. The 11-year-old daughter was the mother. My daughter was the child.
I've been in programs. I've been in a couple of programs trying to get straight. And it's really hard when you go home and it hits you at your door before, the mailman hits you at the door or anything else, that, the dope man is there at the door. And it's hard.
Monique, tell me a little bit about how you feel about drugs.
I hate them. I wish they were never invented. Because then I can't live with my mommy and can't be with my brother. So sometimes just hate people that do drugs, except for my mom. But really, I'm glad that I know all these things going. I get older, I won't take drugs. And I know what to do with my kids, because I practically raised a kid already myself. They just make so many things to kill people. Why can't they make so many things to keep us alive?
Today, Monique's grandmother is keeping her alive, and for that, she's grateful.
I know that she's always gonna be there to help me, clothe me, and I know I'm not gonna be alone. She never leave me. If she does that, my auntie's always there. She don't go very far. Don't leave me. I feel happy. I know she loves me. I don't have to know anything else but that she loves me.
You've been through quite a bit, haven't you?
Yes.
How you doing now?
Fine.
Tell us a little bit about it, will you?
It was real hard to talk about, and I just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's too hard. Well, Orlean is here. Let's talk to the grandmother here. Orlean, you have had, of course, quite a bit of time to have to take care of the grandchildren. Is that right?
Yes, I have.
Did you ever expect this to happen?
No, I didn't.
Why did you do it?
Because I love them, and I didn't want them to be away from me in foster homes and things.
It's been hard, hasn't it?
Yes.
It's hard on grandparents.
Yes, it is. Very hard. But I'm very proud of my daughter. Now she's been clean and dry for 10 months.
What? And Lisa, tell us about it. Tell us why and how you begun to move and become clean.
It started it was hard for me to look at my daughter and my kids, the things I had done, I always wanted to be a perfect mother, for my children. And their father wasn't there because he was on crack, and it seemed like there was no other way, and I had nowhere to turn to but Glide with this church. I came here. I had tried other programs. The waiting list was so long, and it was like nowhere to turn. I came to the sanctuary, and they took me in. I was going to the programs here every day. It kept me clean until I found a program, and I've been in Walton House for almost a year clean now.
Yeah.
Proud of that.
How about that? 3 generations of black women. Thank you very much. Dr. Miller, Dorian Miller, yes. You turn around here, that's right, let's look at this camera. You had a lot to do with the initiation and the formation of Grandmothers, didn't you?
That's right. I am co-founder and group facilitator for Grandparents Who Care, which is a support and advocacy group for grandparents and extended family members who are raising their grandchildren because their adult children are addicted to crack cocaine or alcohol or have other problems, along with Nurse Sue Trupin at San Francisco General.
Are you proud of what's going on?
To have Elisa to come here today and to talk about her recovery and to see the three of them here together is just overwhelming. It just re-emphasizes some of the points that have been made in so many of the conferences and workshops today, and that is the importance of the inclusion of the entire family within the healing process.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much.
It's now believed that every 90 seconds a crack baby is born in America. Children born to crack users are addicts themselves and come into this world suffering the ravages of addiction and withdrawal. They demand special care, which they're now receiving from a new program designed for the tiniest victims of the crack epidemic. They're jittery one moment, asleep the next. They have a high incidence of strokes and need constant attention. They're crack babies, infants born to mothers addicted to crack cocaine. Nationwide, more than 10,000 drug-exposed children are born each year, with about 40% of them testing positive for cocaine.
Many of the youngsters tend to not be able to focus. Some of them have seizures. Some of them are just shut down completely and are just out of it. And so
Dr. Charlie Mayknight is superintendent of the Ravenswood School District in East Palo Alto and was instrumental in starting the Parent-Child Intervention Program, an innovative daycare center for some of the youngest victims of the crack epidemic.
These youngsters were often disoriented. Many of these youngsters were not potty trained when they came to kindergarten, and thus added an additional task for kindergarten teachers.
The Ravenswood program started when teachers noticed severe behavioral problems among children born to mothers on crack. To get the children before they reach school age, Ravenswood specializes in one-on-one caregiving for crack babies who are typically underweight and hyperactive. While hospitals are concerned primarily with detoxing drug babies, Ravenswood combines emotional nurturing with physical therapy for infants whose bodies are rigid and minds disoriented from their mother's crack addiction.
And then stretch. They never are able to understand the difference between day and night. And so what we try to do, we take that child, and when the child comes in at 7 o'clock in the morning, we give the child a bath, and we probably feed the child. And then we let the child sleep for about an hour and a half. And we will wake that child and provide some stimulation exercises so the child will know that during the day they're supposed to be awake and they're supposed to play and enjoy.
The Ravenswood program was started in November of 1989 and today cares for 30 infants, ranging in age from 2 weeks to 3 years. When newborns test positive for drugs, mothers are reported to San Mateo County's Child Protective Services. Parents must choose between giving up their child to the courts, which may order foster care, or taking them to Ravenswood. If they choose Ravenswood and enter drug counseling, they get to keep their child. It's too early to say how well the Ravenswood program will succeed, but experts feel that with early intervention, these children don't have to grow up with the drug and alcohol problems they're born with.
We expect to have these babies in the program until kindergarten if the parents are still in the area. So we're talking about from 2 weeks to 5 years.
We think that we'll be able to sort of structure the lives of these children in such a way that what happened in terms of the impact of drugs would have less effect on the intellect as it would if these youngsters were left alone and nothing happened.
Dr. Charlie Mayknight, superintendent at Ravenswood, why did you decide that it was important for you to pursue this program?
Well, I was very, very concerned about a growing trend in this country to remove the children from their mothers at birth. Mm-hmm. And I felt that the mothers should have another option. And so I decided that we should build a collaborative between 3 agencies that impacted the lives of these mothers. One was the health department, the other was Child Protective Services. So the 3 of us got together and decided that since we did not have the resources to establish programs for these mothers, that perhaps we should pool our resources. And so we did. And we established the Parent-Child Intervention Center so that mothers who elect to keep their children will have an opportunity to receive treatment, so that grandmothers who are left with those children will receive some respite care during the day, so that they'll be fresh at night when these children return home. And in addition to that, we felt that mothers who finally are recovering mothers will have an opportunity to go to school and acquire skills. And so we felt that that's one way that an institution that where we have an all-black board, a black superintendent, met the very, very special needs of a black community.
Thank you. Edna. Here's one of those recovering mothers, Edna Watts of the Facts on Crack at Glide Church. Edna, there's a group here that you and others work with called Women on the Move. What is this all about? What are women trying to do? What are women trying to come about?
What women are doing in Women on the Move, we began that program because we needed an outlet for ourselves to see what exactly was happening in our lives, so we could regain control of our lives, so we could help our brothers and help society and become independent within our own being. We first had to get to ourselves. We had to redefine what was power for a woman and still remain a mother and still be able to be a wife and a person with power, a person who can make your choices and decisions, a person who can go about a day and accomplish something for all mankind in general.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Dr. Rick Fulroth, I understand you head up the pediatric
Yeah, right, good, okay.
unit at Highland Hospital.
Look at your four there. Just stand right here, look at four.
First of all, I'd like to thank the black community for this concern that they're showing, because I have taken care of the babies at Highland Hospital since 1980. And I can say it's a public hospital in Alameda County. It services all the people, all races, all the people. In 1980, I took care of 7 drug babies. In 1989, I cared for 437 urine toxicology screen positive crack infants. This is devastating for the community. It is your future. It is our future. It is the United States' future. These kids are our only hope for the future. I want to say a few other things too. Crack is not the only drug that's causing devastation. 80% of our babies are exposed to alcohol, which is the major cause of mental retardation in this country. Alcoholism is rampant throughout society. I want to say that these people use marijuana, people use PCP, which is angel dust, and heroin. Finally, there's something else that's happening in our community that we should all be concerned about right now. In 1980, congenital syphilis was a historical disease. 1 case at Highland Hospital in 1980. I will care for over 100 cases of congenital syphilis at Highland Hospital alone this year. It causes devastation to the newborn. It is associated with toss-up, which is the way people trade crack or sex for crack. And what I can say is I'm pleased that we are all meeting here today. I hope that this will mean that we won't have to see crack babies in 1995.
Minnie Thomas is the director of Mandela House in Oakland. Tell us about Mandela House.
Mandela House is a program for pregnant, drug-addicted women and their infants. I believe that children should be kept with their mom. I, too, felt that it was ridiculous for us to be taking the babies from the mom soon as she delivered for the good of the child. And I asked, for the good of who? We don't know what we're doing to these children by separating them from their mother. I think we need to help the mother. We cannot help the child without helping the mother, and that's what we do at Mandela House. We take her on a voluntary basis. We keep her for a year to 18 months, and we teach her how to maintain her lifestyle and it's based on reality. And reality is what we call it, the reality treatment. And what that is that means that we start from the time she had her first traumatic experience, bring it up to the time that she walked to the door with this Lucky's bag in her hand, and that was all she had in the world. And we bring it up to that time, and then we give her a set of values. We empower her to be all that she can be. We let her know that nothing is impossible, and that with the spirit to do things in the right way, whatever spirit you choose, that's the one that's going to manage your life. And so if you choose a good spirit, then you can look at what you get and then give in return so that you can receive. If you receive something, we teach them to share that. And we share it with the schools. We go to the legislature. We go to seminars and workshops. They're in the Oakland Crack Task Force. We are out there and we're fighting for what we believe in.
In the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles, one program is proving that mothers with drug problems don't need to lose their children to get treatment. The House of Uhuru is an innovative approach to drug counseling that stresses recovery of the addict and the family at the same time, hoping to free future generations from the cycle of drug abuse. For the last 4 years, House of Uhuru, which means freedom in Swahili, has been offering drug treatment to the residents of Watts in Los Angeles. The program, which is funded by LA County, makes a special effort to reach pregnant women addicted to cocaine.
Women come here when they're pregnant, women who are abusing, and most of the women here abuse cocaine. They come here when they're pregnant, they stay here until time to deliver, and following delivery, they come back here and they rear their children here.
The new mother is required to stay at the house until her child's first birthday.
Along with the actual detoxification from the substance, clients need rehabilitation. They need some time to spend with their system free of drugs.
During their stay at Uhuru House, participants learn how to take care of their children and themselves through classes on parenting, health, and nutrition. Beyond these mothering skills, Uhuru House provides on-site high school classes. No one leaves the program without a bank account or a job and a place to live. Administrators say 50% of the program's graduates remain drug-free.
Basically, if something's going to happen, it's going to happen anyway. And I don't have to use because we all go through ups and downs.
Besides the 26-bed program for crack mothers, Uhuru House operates a 40-bed residential facility for other adult addicts. In this program, clients stay for 6 to 9 months.
When I first came, it seemed like I had no life of my own, and this house helped me to gain that feeling of living back.
When I came to the house of Uhuru, I was 8.5 months pregnant. I was worried if my baby would even survive. My children, and me, our relationship, it really wasn't much of a relationship. I wasn't any kind of a mother, And I've learned that I can be a mother, a good mother. And through it all, my kids, they forgive me and they love me. And because I love myself now, I'm able to love my children. I'm really grateful.
The house have put back a lot of self-esteem that I lost out there on the street using. Because, it's just a lot of love here in the house that everybody has for each other. And that's was a big hole in my life, for as love and a lot of people caring for each other.
I know, I felt like I was in bondage. My addiction, like I was a slave, This house has set me free. Set me free.
Although Uhuru House recently added 6 beds to its capacity of 60, it has a waiting list. Administrators say they would need literally hundreds of beds to meet the needs of the Watts community.
Martha Hall Stewart is, of course, from Uhuru House. Martha, tell us about it.
Well,
Why'd you start it?
Well, we saw the need to provide an environment for mothers to rear their children in a substance-free atmosphere. we believe that instead of mothers having to give up their children to foster care, that we should have something in our community that resembles a home and a family setting where the mothers can be pregnant when they come into the program, go to the hospital, deliver their babies, and come back and live in an environment that is safe and drug-free.
Thank you very much, Martha. David Kears is from San Francisco General Hospital.
Oakland, Highland.
Huh?
Highland Hospital, Oakland.
From Highland Hospital, I'm sorry. David Kears is from Highland Hospital in Oakland. Is that right? Tell us about it, David. You has to do with funding. You got some problems, haven't we?
We got more problems than we have resources. I think the panel members talked about there that the problem is both values, but it's also resources and priorities. And no matter how much we try, and we are trying, and as evidenced by this group here, the community is committed. You still need the resources, you still need the change in priorities. I think that you have a community that can mobilize, can make a difference, but they need the support, and that means some money, means a change in values.
Thank you.
David Kears is also the Alameda County Health Director. He's been on KQED numerous times asking where the state support is for the crack crisis, and that's a question perhaps we should ask of Elihu Harris, a California State Assemblyman.
Well, I think obviously the state of California is not doing what it needs to be doing. It's like the national government. It has the same type of leadership. It mirrors the leadership of the national government, quite frankly. It's reactionary. It is not interested in people. It's more interested in prisons. And we have a reactionary approach to everything, crisis orientation. And the real thing we're going to have to do is change some of the people in government, certainly the people at the presidential level and the governor's level, because the priorities are wrong. And if you look at what you've heard tonight, we've got to deal with this in a comprehensive way. There's systemic things that aren't being addressed that have to do a lot with education, that have a lot to do with social services. It is not simply a matter of drug abuse. There are underlying problems that are so deep, we're not going to be able to deal with them if we only talk about law enforcement, if we only talk about after-the-fact kind of solutions. So I really think we've got to start talking about changing the government and changing its priorities. Otherwise, the problem is going to escape us, and the war on drugs is not going to be won because it's not really being fought in the first place.
Why does the state seem to be so reluctant? Why does the state seem to be so reluctant to fund programs and hospitals like Highland General Hospital?
Because of our priorities. You heard very well, if you listen carefully, to what was said by Mr. Nobles. Dr. Nobles is absolutely correct. It is a systemic problem that has to do with the values of the society, and we really can't get away from that. The values of society reflected in this government. And if you go to Sacramento, you're talking about people who come from suburban districts who don't see this as a problem that affects their community. They don't care about the people in the inner city. They believe, quite frankly, if the people die in the inner city, they probably would be happier. Their real concern is, quite frankly, can they lock them up? Can they make the problem disappear from visual sight? They don't care if the problem is solved. They only want to not have impact on them individually or their districts.
Well, as an assemblyman, can you make a difference?
Obviously, we can introduce legislation, but the legislature is led by the governor, the governor's budget. If you look at the governor's budget priorities, they reflect the same type of priorities that you have with the national budget. The only thing we can leverage this governor on is prisons. He'll give us $20,000 to $30,000 a year for prison cells. He won't give us $5,000 a year to educate a child. That's what's wrong with this state.
What is the state doing about treatment and recovery?
Not enough. Absolutely not enough. And we can introduce legislation as long as we want to. It takes 2/3 vote to pass a bill. It takes the governor's signature. We have not overridden the governor's veto in 8 years that Governor George Deukmejian has been in office. And I'm telling you, until we change the governor, until we change the presidency, what you're going to see is a lack of governmental response. We're going to have to continue to do what we're doing now, talk about the problem, but not solving it. If we expect government to solve it, we're going to have to change the government.
One place it is getting solved is in Minneapolis. One example of a recovery program that believes hard work and discipline are the foundations upon which recovery is based is Turning Point in Minneapolis. Those traditional values are not just helping addicts to recover, they're also winning friends and support for the recovery process.
you go. Good girl. Good girl.
Morning in the park with her daughter Monica is a precious pleasure for Laverne.
Look at that.
It's a life she had thrown away until drug abuse treatment gave her the help she needed to shake the tenacious grip of cocaine.
When you start, you can't stop. You know, you're going like binges. At first, that's the way I was until I just got, so critical where I couldn't stop at all. That was all I lived for. My daily routine was to get money, get crack, smoke it, get more money, get crack, smoke it, just that vicious circle on and on.
The help that Laverne needed to get off and stay off drugs came from Turning Point, a neighborhood drug treatment center in North Minneapolis. When clients arrive, they start with a strict routine of chores and duties and earn their way to responsibility. Each person answers to the group for mistakes, and the consequences are tough but fair. But something more than discipline is going on.
This is home for a client. This is for some clients the first time or in a long time, this is the closest to family life that they've had because it's been cutthroat out there. And what I mean by cutthroat is that it's dog eat dog. I'm going to get mine no matter what price the next person pays. Now we're starting to say, hey, you don't have to be that way. You can like yourself. The whole thing about doing unto others as you'd have to yourself is just the fact that how can I respect you if I don't respect myself? Or how can I respect myself if I don't respect you? And that's those kinds of values that we start to instill in our clients here.
Once learned, these values have to be put into action.
You don't have to be bragging. You don't have to do nothing but do your job and do it well.
With a successful executive as a role model, clients learn skills that they will need in the working world.
I've been smoking crack for the last 7 years, and I haven't been, haven't been able to be a mom. Right.
The most difficult work comes when people have to take a hard, realistic look at their own lives.
I still cry because I've lost my family, I've lost my husband, my home, but I'm pulling everything back together, and, through the treatment here at Turning Point, as long as I keep making my meetings and aftercare, it keeps me strong, and I'm able to just put up with everyday activities and things that usually have you, I need a drink, I need a hit, a crack. It's like, that's not your answer no more. You got to try something different.
Getting off drugs just is not enough. You need to be able to therapeutically work through what got you to drugs in the first place. If you walk in here with a gut full of garbage, feeling bad about yourself, knowing that you're using chemicals to give you something that you can't get from yourself, or you're using chemicals to cover up a feeling that you have about yourself, or whatever the issue may be, if you come into treatment and all you do is not use for 6 months, basically what you're going to do is take that same garbage back out of here with you, and you're going to go back to what you can do to help you feel better. Okay? So treatment is more than not using.
The value to the community of centers like Turning Point is appreciated by their next-door neighbor.
I'm aware that many people think that having treatment facilities are bad, but I think they lack the knowledge that drug problems are illnesses. And just as I might have a disease and need to go to the hospital and that shouldn't be in another community, why should we not have facilities like this in our own community too?
When you walked up here, you did not see a sign that said Turning Point Incorporated, founded in 1976. You know why? Because we are part of the community. We don't need a sign. We need the same thing they have, an address. But you know what? When people pass by here, they say, oh, that's Turning Point. If people walk by, oh, what's this big old thing? Oh, that's Turning Point. What they do? I don't know, man, but if you got a drug problem, they can help you. That is what you want a community-based program to end up being. And you can do that.
Mr. Peter Hayden, director of Turning Point from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Turning Point. Is it really a turning point?
Yes, it is, Reverend. I, in 1973, knew that when we sent our clients to European programs, they were coming back endangered.
It was a need, as Dr. Noble said, to deal with a racism. And the only way you can deal with the racism is by dealing with the culture. We started a culturally specific program, and everything that you've seen tonight is culturally specific. I say to anyone looking at this, don't get your priorities mixed up. If you think something's wrong with culturally specific, let everybody continue to do drugs, and you won't be able to go outside of your house. Okay? Knowing that 15 years ago, I started Turning Point to meet those needs so we all could be the way we are this evening, fighting a drug together. I have not heard anyone not say that the people standing here are not genuine. It's the same about those clients that you see there. Those clients want everything that we have here. Those clients want a role model. I told someone the other day, why should I wear a Robert Hall suit when the drug dealers wear thousands of dollars worth of jewelry? But yet and still, when I'm in a nonprofit situation, I am supposed to act and work a certain way. No longer can we do that. We have to be educated. We can no longer go in a treatment program culturally and not be educated. We have to be educated. We have to take something to these young people who are drug addicts and who are selling drugs, because otherwise you're not going to make it. So in a culturally specific program as Turning Point, those are the things that we try to do.
Thank you very much. Ginger?
Another successful program right here in the Bay Area has been the Facts on Crack program here at Glide Memorial Church. Mr. Eddie Franks is not only a counselor with Facts on Crack, he is an ex-user. And Eddie, perhaps you can tell us why the program is working.
Most traditional treatment programs lack the basic component that we have here at Glide Facts on Crack program, and that is spirituality. Sometimes you can look at recovery and it's depleted as a pyramid. You have your clinical aspect, you have a therapeutic aspect. But the most important part that holds that pyramid up is the spiritual foundation. As African American people, our roots are deeply embedded within the church. Coming into Glide is that sense of solidarity, that sense of unity, that sense of spirituality, especially dealing with crack cocaine. We're talking about one of the most devastating drugs that has hit our society. And adding the three components together of the clinical aspect, along with the therapeutic aspect, we have a very high success rate in dealing with cocaine psychosis because there are many different things that trigger the drug itself. It definitely takes a power greater than ourselves to overcome this drug. Mm-hmm. And that's what we learned here at Glide Facts on Crack program.
You also spend a great deal of time working within the legal system.
Our society looks at drugs as being criminal. In the therapeutic community, we realize we're dealing with people in the grip of a disease. We're not talking about disease of drug, but disease of addictions. When an ex-offender stands in front of the criminal justice system, he brings with him a unique set of problems. Dysfunctional family, single parents. There are so many factors that are being looked over that need to be looked at. What we need to do is develop between law enforcement agencies, educational systems, healthcare facilities, a cohesive network in combating drug abuse on all levels.
The people attending this conference tonight have come in from all over the country. It's your turn to talk now. If you have questions for our panelists or something you'd like to add to what's already been said here tonight, go ahead and line up. We do like to remind you, though, that time is short, and Cecil has been appointed to come in and cut you off if you go too long. So, starting over here, who are you and where are you from?
My name is Daniel Carroll, president of the 7th generation. I like to know what you focus on uniting the mother with the child. What about the father? That good question. He suffered too. You know, we love our kids. We want to do something. There's very few of us, but we want to unite.
Why don't you tell them that you're a father? Tell them you're a single father with children. Here's a single father. He's making a plea.
Yes, I have 6 kids in a foster home, and I'm doing what I can do to get my kids back.
All right. Do you think we have a tendency to ignore the fathers in all of this?
Yes, you do. Because it's hard for a father to gather information how to start getting his kids back. And once he start moving, they set up so many things that he don't know nothing about. He's still getting lost in the shuffle.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
This side.
My name is Oscar Eason, and I'm from the city of Seattle. And my question is directed at John Burse.
All right.
In a lot of our urban centers, and more recently in all across the state of New Jersey, a charge is being made that law enforcement agents are going after black suspects because there's a very high probability of an arrest. Is that in fact true?
Well, one of the things that I have, number one, it probably is true. Secondly, I find that this whole drug problem has sort of corrupts in large parts the mentality of police officers. It is very easy to arrest a person on the street who is obviously present. You can see them engage in the illegal activities. But what really happens that's unfortunate is for those of us who live in neighborhoods where crack is going on, police very frequently violate our civil rights as they make these efforts to arrest those who commit the crimes. As such, many people who live in there who have no options, who must live in a poor neighborhood, all of their rights are essentially trampled on. They are stopped without probable cause. They are frisked. They're treated disrespectfully. If they make any inquiries as to why, in fact, they're being stopped, they're frequently arrested and thrown in jail for a variety of charges. So to answer your question directly, yes.
Cecil.
Yes, Ginger, tell us who you are, each person, maybe who you are and where you're from. Okay.
My name is Dorothy Burns, a recovering addict of concentrated Glifax on crack. I need to say this to you, the lady who held up the cocaine. As a recovered addict, I understand a lot of people don't know what cocaine look like, but as a recovered addict, I need to ask for you and other people to give us some little respect. There's a stage of recovery. There are stages of recovery that we go through. And in very early recovery, that is triggers. There's some people in this audience, I'm sure, stomach turned over by seeing this cocaine. And it's not to blame, it's to educate other people of this.
Well, that is a valid point, and we did not intend to be insensitive, but there are many people out there in our viewing audience who simply do not know what crack cocaine looks like.
Yeah, okay, let's go over here, is that right?
My name is Carter Gilmore. I am a member of the Oakland City Council, and in our community, we fight cocaine and we move it around from one area of the community to another one. And I'm sure the same thing happened in many communities. My question is, America is the strongest country there is in the world. America is not fighting the war on drugs. When is America going to wake up at our leadership position as the president and at that position going to really fight a war on drugs? Can someone answer that for me?
Julianne?
I like the nomenclature here, the war on drugs, is something we need to deal with. We are having an unprecedented opportunity in our nation, our world right now. We've demilitarized the whole Soviet axis, and now we're talking about a war on drugs. There's a potential for a peace dividend of $150 billion or more, and we want to talk about a war on drugs. It is not a war on drugs. It's been a war on African American people, and when we talk about turning things around, we need to absolutely talk about capturing that peace dividend, trickling it down to our communities, in fact, trickling it up from the bottom of our communities and talk about how we can spend this money. So I absolutely understand what you're saying, but let's look at the words we're using. When you transfer from war to war, you're saying keep that military industrial complex intact, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm Carolyn Wilson, and I'd like to address Dr. Thornton with the education system. I'm from the Social Service of San Francisco. Is there some type of preparation for mandatory training for teachers for this ongoing problem?
No, there is not. There are many programs where we're attempting to work with communities and other agencies, but if we again put the responsibility on the schools, it makes it very difficult for us to do the job of teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. No, I'm sorry, we do not specifically train teachers to work with the drug problems. We do have or attempt to have in our elementary school counselors and social workers, which becomes a fiscal issue because when we start cutting budgets, we cut those services furthest from the classroom, and those are the services we must have. What we have had success with, however, is when we, either through a program like Cities in Schools or in communities where, as Dr. Knight mentioned, someone takes the lead to bring together those agencies whose job it is to work with those families in the community, and they then begin to look at what is my responsibility in this. Our job is to educate. Human Services is there to do those other things.
Joe Marshall wants to respond.
And on the question of education that you raised, I think one of the big problems here is that we're getting incorrect education or miseducation. In fact, our history of our people, African American history, the things that we're talking about the system and historical perspective is left out of public education, even today. And until those things are put in the history books and kids are properly trained from the beginning in an Afrocentric view of the world and not a Eurocentric view of the world, that's education. You can't miseducate. Those things have to be in our curriculum in order to get our kids to understand the traps that they're falling into if crack cocaine and other ills that afflict our young kids.
But Joe, we have to go back to the reality. We must go back to the reality of we are having fewer and fewer Afro-Americans entering into teaching. We are not in the classroom. Whites are educating our children, and why we're leaving it up to a system that never planned to educate us to do something that they have never done confuses me.
Yeah.
Why aren't, Dr. Thornton, why aren't African Americans entering teaching?
Pardon? I'm sorry.
Why aren't?
Well, when we look at the data now, in California, less than 5% of our kids graduating from a 12th grade are even eligible to enter into the CSU-UC system. Less than 5%.
I have here president of one of the housing associations, public housing associations.
I just wanted to comment on a lot of things that have been already said here tonight. Number one, I agree about the educational thing, but we also need to educate our young people that while they are dealing drugs, they are being used. They make the small amounts of money, get the jail sentences, and the big man in Washington sits back and relaxes and draws down all the money. I was tired of seeing our kids go to jail, our children being lost, our babies being born addicted. We have had our mothers addicted to drugs, and we cannot keep our generation going because it takes a black man to make a black baby. And when the baby comes here, the baby is already addicted. I got tired of seeing this. I wanted to do something to try to save our race, to get some programs going. And as we have said tonight, it's going to take all of us together to conquer this thing.
Thank you very much.
Woman over here on the right.
My name is Jeru Simmons. I'm a graduate of the 4th generation at the Facts on Cracks program. I'd like to tell you about my losses of my children, my agony, my defeat, my prostitution, or my success and my return of my children. But I choose to tell you this. If you feed me fish for a day, then I'll be full for a day. But if you teach me to fish, then I'll be full for a lifetime.
All right.
I am resistance, I am hope, and my children are recovery. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Keith James, and I'm from Los Angeles. And I'd like to ask a question of Cecil and the entire panel. Actually, it's a request for a resolution condemning the barricades that are being set up in Los Angeles under the cover of the war on drugs. 6 different black and Latino areas of Los Angeles comprising 40,000 people have been, quote unquote, permanently barricaded by the LAPD. Martial law has been declared. Civil liberties have been completely stripped away. Hundreds of immigrants and hundreds of black people have been arrested. We're talking about the permanent ghettoization, the physical establishment of ghettos in Los Angeles. And Drug Czar Bennett has been to the city and said, this is the most ambitious neighborhood crackdown in the country and something that needs to be institutionalized nationally. I think at this conference here, it's very important that Cecil, the panel, and all of us come out of it with a resolution condemning police abuse and the use of the war on drugs as a war on the people, and the war on black people, and the war on Latino people, and a war on poor whites. This is something that needs to be exposed at this conference, and I'd like to hear what Cecil or the panel has to say about that.
I would say I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I see this clearly around the Bay Area in all communities where there are blacks and Hispanics, that what you see essentially is the local police agencies putting a disproportionate amount of their monies into the local areas. And essentially what you do, what has occurred is that most of these black communities are barricaded, either, if not structurally, but constructively, by people not being able to leave those communities without being harassed. I think it's morally wrong. It's a violation of the law, and the people within those communities themselves must stand up and indicate that they won't stand for it. I, as a lawyer, can only do so much. It's full employment for me, but on the other hand, it is not the way to go, and I think it's wrong to enslave and to violate the civil rights of others, all in the name of trying to have a war on drugs.
John Burris, are you worried at all that people could say that you get paid with crack money?
I'm not worried about it, but it is in fact true. I do not like the idea, the very notion that large numbers of black people, young black people, are in fact have chosen as a way of life the selling and using of crack cocaine. Unfortunately, once they have been arrested, they have constitutional rights. It is my job as a lawyer to represent people and to defend them. That does not mean that I enjoy seeing a destruction of black people. It is quite painful to me to see all these black people in court going to state prison knowing that they will never ever have a meaningful and useful life. That is just fundamentally wrong, and I think that we as a society must address ourselves to it. I would prefer not to have that nature of a practice. But unfortunately, as long as police arrest people, as long as it is against the law, then we will have this kind of thing. And I, for one, after seeing all this, I think that we as a nation should seriously consider whether or not legalization or decriminalization of drugs is an approach that we should strongly consider. It has been talked about and is looked at, but I think we need to do something to stop enslaving all of these young black people and destroying generations and generations of people. And when you see this happen,
I would like to comment on that. We physicians in the field of addiction medicine are opposed to legalization. If you legalized crack cocaine, the failure to have an upper level of tolerance, you would greatly swell the number of active addicts, increasing the harm done to the people, and the biggest group that would suffer would be the black community. So I disagree with the lawyer and stress that we in the field of addiction medicine are opposed to legalization, and the biggest victims of legalization would be the black community in and of itself. I do, however, want
Dr. Benny Prim, I think, wants to say something.
I do want to support a public health approach for demand reduction and decriminalization of the addict so that they'll receive treatment in the fashion that has been outlined here at the conference. This is the type of leadership that Cecil and Glide has tried to provide to distinguish between decriminalization of the disease. Addiction is a disease that deserves treatment, while still maintaining the agent of the addiction, the crack cocaine, maintaining it in an illegal status so we don't have our inner city communities further flooded with this quite addicting agent.
The other thing,
let's let Dr. Prim.
Well, what I wanted to quickly say is that certainly I agree with David. I'm unalterably opposed to the legalization, particularly for the same reasons he is, that it would be devastating in minority communities in this nation. We only have to look at what's happened with alcohol and even cigarettes, and it's really ridiculous to even suggest that in this forum. I want to make one more statement, and that is people who sell drugs, openly sell drugs, are killing people in our community. And John, I hear you saying that you might not want these people to go to jail, and that bothers me greatly. There is a responsibility for those individuals who are out here selling drugs.
Well, when you have a disproportionate number of black people going to jail, and 80% of the people who use and sell drugs are in fact white people, but 80% of the people going to jail are black people. That is obviously wrong. That means that the government itself, when they put 75% of their money in local police agency and not deal with the people who are actually making the most money and the most profit, means that we have a misplaced priority. Now, I don't have the answer to this. I'm just saying I don't like seeing all these black people killed and going to state prison and having no meaningful life.
Let's get
a destroying families. When we do this, we have families that will be destroyed for generations and generations. I don't have the answer. All I'm saying is that we have misplaced priorities. I think Elihu is right when he says that the governments are not addressing this particular issue. But what are we to do? Not do anything and let all these people go to jail and forever be destroyed?
Let's get a response here. Let's get a response here.
I'm Patrick Williams from Dallas, Texas, and those drugs that we have legalized are leading the way in the destruction of our people. According to Dr. Prim, over 1,000 folks a day die because of abuse of nicotine, and over 350 of us die a day, us Americans, because we abuse alcohol. So the answer is not legalization. We must change the value system, as Dr. Nobles has talked about. That is hard, that is painful, but that is the approach that we must do, and go back to a God-centered culture.
I need to just interrupt for a moment for our viewers at home who have been waiting for the program to come on that was scheduled at 11 o'clock. We are obviously going a little long. The program, The Other Side of the Freeway, will be coming on following our completion here tonight.
Are we going over to the right here, or shall we continue?
Gentlemen,
yes.
over on the
okay.
right. You've been waiting
got
patiently.
on values. I'm Charles Akins. I'm the editor of the oldest black newspaper west of the Rocky Mountains. And what my question is to an educator, and I'd like Dr. Knight to answer it since she gives such good answers, is that with the teaching of values in the school, since the quality of life is deteriorating so much in the country, what would it take to get mandatory drug education in the school systems in this country? Since education is the largest industry in the country with more than 75 million people directly involved.
Okay, let's let her answer the question.
Charlie. Well, I don't know what will. Well, I think a simple edict just simply says that it is mandatory. If we can require PE to graduate from high school, it appears to me that we ought to be able to require drug education to graduate from high school.
Okay.
That's not the answer.
All right, let's get your question, please.
My name is Beverly Jones, and I'm from Stockton, California. And the first thing I'd like to say is that I'm not here to impress anybody, but I'd like to speak from a personal level of recovery. I'm a recovering heroin addict. I thought that was the worst thing that could ever happen to me until I started smoking rocks. We call it rocks in Stockton. It's crack down here. But you know, the change that took place for me had to begin in my heart. And nobody with education, with money, with power, with anything was able to change that. You know, I had to drop to my knees and call on a power that was greater than myself. You know, I have a lot of mixed emotions tonight, and I felt real compelled to come up here and share with you guys how I felt about this. You know, but there's a lot of people here that are searching for something. But the answer is in the Lord. The answer is in God, you know. And I'm just here to tell you, and this message right here is for the person that is still under the influence, the person with 24 hours, up to the bishop. If you don't have the Lord for your Savior and die tonight, you're going to hell.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Andrew Palmer. I'm from Pasadena, California. I've absorbed everything that was said here this evening, and I've watched the video. And one of the most important things that was mentioned in the video is each individual expressed his or her need to find that love within him or herself. And what I'd like to say is, in addition, and I'd like to take this challenge upon the black church in our community, because the black church for 4 centuries has been the most solid foundation in our communities. I'd like to challenge them with the fact that if we're going to have 1 hour Bible study, we need to have 1 hour cultural study. If we can't share that whole hour, then make a half-hour Bible study and a half-hour cultural study. You have to understand that if I do not love myself, then there's nothing that I can truly absorb. And I think that spirituality combined with the understanding of what we are from an Afrocentric perspective, helping us to fulfill what's missing inside of us.
Thank you very much, my man.
Gentleman on the right.
Yeah.
We're going to make it short because we just got a few seconds now.
Make it short, Reverend Cecil. My name is Jesse Prim. I'm a recovering addict and the first generation here at Reverend Cecil Williams Church on Facts on Crack. I got a lot to say, but I'm not going to say one thing. I want to direct this to Dr. Prim up there. Dr. Prim, I want you to answer this question for me. The things that I see as a recovering addict that works more than anything in this country is addicts taking the message to addicts. I want to ask you one question, Dr. Prim. I was going to get up here tonight and donate $300 and see what everybody in this company donate $300. But I'm going to ask you to do something for me. Why don't you set up a program for people that's in recovery, that take your intestines, bring them together, the addicts together, and do something with the addicts that is truly in recovery, that's been delivered, and let them go back out into the community and set up a program that works, because what's going to work for
Let him answer the question.
Addicts taking the message to addicts. So
let him answer.
Answer me that question. Can you do that? Can you do that for addicts?
Hold it, Jesse. Let him answer. Jesse. Jesse, let him answer it.
Jesse happens to be my namesake. His name is Jesse Prim. Jesse, let me say this. There's no question about it. We do run programs in this country that are run purely by recovering people, and I know and really believe in the impact that they make in bringing about and bringing the message to other individuals who happen to be drug dependent. So that's not new, and we certainly will underwrite those kind of programs.
Ladies and gentlemen and brothers and sisters, we have attempted in this television program to bring to you emerging models. We've tried to bring to you solutions. We've tried to bring to you those people who are in the trenches throughout America. We've tried to bring to you a sense of destiny. We've tried to make sure that those issues that needed to get discussed at least were put forth. We hope that you who are here and those of you that are seeing this program will realize that we've got a long way to go. And we hope that you will realize also that we can do it by having information and education and direction and a sense of destiny and a sense of being able to resist and go on. This program, I'm convinced, is a step for us all to get on and get moving. Thank you so very much.
We'd like to thank you for joining us and thank all of our guests who participated in tonight's program. If you'd like to make a difference and be part of the solution to this epidemic, we have put together a resource guide to agencies working toward recovery in the Black community here in the Bay Area. It will tell you where to go for treatment, how much it costs, and who needs volunteers to keep their operation open. Call the number on your screen, 415-553-2875. If you have trouble getting through, please call again starting Monday. We will have phones open all week. Please do it. It's everyone's problem, and we all have to be part of the solution. And coming up next is another KQED program. It's called The Other Side of the Freeway, and it will show you how the city of East Palo Alto is dealing with drug abuse and violence. On behalf of KQED and Glide Memorial Church, I'm Ginger Casey. Good night. Okay, now, we're not really over. We still have, we can take a couple more questions. We just went off the air. Go ahead, Deborah.
Hi, my name is Deborah, and I'm also a recovering alcoholic and addict. And I need to say, that it's real important for the Black community, for us as recovering addicts and alcoholics. We need role models. What I find for me is that, one of the reasons why I use drugs and alcohol, because I didn't think much of myself. I had a very low level of self-esteem, And it was a problem that I kept to myself. I didn't go around knocking on people's doors telling people I have problems with drugs and alcohol. And what hurts for me, is we don't have any role models in recovery, like the brother was saying. We are ostracized. It's like, oh, you do drugs? Ooh, get away from me. That is not a support system that we need. For me, as a recovering addict, when I got arrested, I was looked at as a murderer. Not looked at as somebody that needed help and had a problem. When I'd walk down the streets, people would point their finger at me. I had to feel within myself that there was hope. And once I did that, I was able to seek help. And that's really important for people in recovery.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Let's go here and over here.
I just want to say, I don't know your name right there, the older fella. I just want to say, you was talking about how bad the dope dealers are out there on the street corner selling dope. What about the people that's letting the drugs in? And what about people like people in Congress who sell artillery to our enemies? Don't you think that's a crime?
Come on.
The program Race Against Crack will be shown again Sunday night at 11:30. It'll be shown in its entirety. Sunday night at 9 o'clock, it's the Masterpiece Theater presentation that looks inside the international drug rings. It's called Traffic, and you'll see it again Sunday night at 9 o'clock, as well as Sunday at noon. That'll be the repeat of the very first episode, in case you missed it. And we'd like to remind you that the KQED special report on drug problems in East Palo Alto, the other side of the freeway, is coming up next tonight. It'll be here in just about 2 minutes. And that program looks at some of the problems engendered in East Palo Alto and the possibility that the city is being neglected by the county of San Mateo.
Major funding for the production and broadcast of this KQED special report, The Race Against Crack, was provided by the members of KQED. Additional funding was provided by Kaiser Permanente. For nearly half a century, the people of Kaiser Permanente have been providing health care services to the Bay Area. And by the Transamerica Foundation. Transamerica for insurance and financial services. The power of the pyramid is working for you. And by the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation, Menlo Park, California. And by a generous contribution from Mr. K. Thomas Rose.
If you have comments about this program, we invite you to call the KQED comments line at 553-2100. We've set up an answering machine to record your comments, which will then be passed to the people concerned. If the line is busy, please try your call in a short while. Again, the number is 553-2100, the area code 415.
After the colossal failure of Lincoln Savings and Loan, an inside look at Charles Keating and his financial empire.
Money was never an object. There was no expense ever spared for any task.
Frontline investigates Keating's extraordinary political connections and the role 5 U.S. senators played in the $2.5 billion scandal.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Watch Other People's Money on Frontline.
That examination of the savings and loan
are ongoing with the intent of intimidating campesinos and disrupting the recent elections. The second film, Crying in the Wilderness, documents the human rights conditions and personal suffering of the rural population in southeastern Nicaragua. Two differing viewpoints on Nicaragua, Monday evening at 10, following the premiere of Inside Gorbachev's USSR, here on member-supported Channel 9, KQED, San Francisco.
Special report was made possible through the generosity of the members of KQED and the additional support of contributors to the KQED Local Program Fund.
East Palo Alto, just 30 miles south of San Francisco, sits on the other side of the Bayshore Freeway from Stanford University and affluent Palo Alto. A racially mixed town of 20,000 people, it is a world apart from the rest of the peninsula.
The freeway has completely separated us from the other side. The last reporter that called me wanted to know if the relationship between East Palo Alto and Palo Alto had deteriorated. And my answer, it hasn't deteriorated because it hasn't existed.
Now, this is a typical crack house?
No, this is certainly not a typical crack house. This is next door to me, and I wouldn't allow a typical crack house to exist next door to me. We have problems with this house, of course, because people come in whenever they can and use it to smoke and mix their drugs.
Reverend Bob Hartley runs a recovery home for crack addicts next to this now abandoned house in East Palo Alto. Hartley organized the neighborhood to force the drug dealer who lived here out of town. But despite his efforts, the house is still a safe haven for users of crack cocaine.
And the druggies will certainly use buildings like this, to get out of the weather and what have you. Might be someone in here. This is evidence of having smoked.
Crack is part of everyday life in East Palo Alto. Most people take it for granted. Bob Hartley can't. He opened his recovery house smack in the middle of the worst drug area in town. And even though he was beaten and shot at, he openly confronted the drug dealers.
Yeah, this was as late as last night. That looks like fresh matches. And this is how the cocaine is lit on the pipe. Twins, matches like that. This is evidence of, that's been there a while, but this is evidence of mix. Baking soda. You cut it, shake it up with baking soda, rock it up. This is evidence, all of the holes in the walls and what have you, is evidence of the frustration in using the drug. Tweaking, we call it. Sometimes you use the drug and you just, you get over tweaked, overamped, and you just got to do something. All this kicking in is, and that could have just as well been someone's head.
But Bob Hartley isn't fighting crack alone anymore.
We have parents who's on drugs. How can you tell your kids something if you use it? You cannot tell your kids anything.
On New Year's Eve, gunmen riddled the East Palo Alto home of Mrs. C.W. Roddy with semi-automatic gunfire, wounding this 60-year-old anti-drug activist. The entire town reacted, and Mrs. Roddy came up fighting.
My new daughters I just got from the little children in San Jose. Hugs, not drugs. Hugs, not drugs. Jolly. Okay, Jolly? Let's look at that. Now, that's what this community is about. That's why we're proud of East Palo Alto. These are two mothers that says, let's get together.
I had enough the first time I walked out there and told those children that I didn't want them selling drugs in front of my house. And I kept saying that for years. I didn't bring this thing on, they did. They decided that they were going to get rid of me. That's what brought this to a head. It wasn't me. It was the little pushers out there on the streets.
It is commonly believed the house was shot at in retaliation for Mrs. Roddy's vocal stance against drug dealing on her street.
First of all, the drugs are illegal, right? I am a law-abiding citizen. I pay taxes. And I feel that I have more of a right to demand the quality of life in which I want to live than they have to tell me or to dictate what kind of life I am to live because they want to sell their drugs and they're illegal.
The FBI launched a very public investigation into the shooting of Mrs. Roddy's home on Westminster Avenue. The Bureau called it an example of narco-terrorism. While nothing has surfaced publicly proving that assumption, Mrs. Roddy became a symbol of citizens standing up to drug dealers, a potential solution to the crack problem here and elsewhere.
Whoever shot at Mrs. Roddy made a mistake, and they picked C.W. Roddy. Very simple. She made a big deal out of it. She's a lady who would not sit down and sit still for that sort of thing.
The press flocked to tell Mrs. Roddy's story. creating headlines nationwide. She was showered with honors and awards. Celebrities, including orator, nutritionist, and comedian Dick Gregory, heard of her plight and came to town to embrace her efforts.
Y'all can stop dope tonight in your neighborhood. All you got to do is just stand there and be willing to die. Malcolm died, Martin died. Just be willing to die. Not be nasty or go out with some guns. Just stand there and say, here I am. No longer are you going to run rampant through this neighborhood of mine. This is all I got.
It's a little like being in a third world country.
Trevor Burrows is an artist and environmentalist who has lived in East Palo Alto for 12 years. He is trying to preserve the friendly small-town flavor.
More relaxed. It's on a different sort of value system from the rush and the jostle of mainstream society. It's very rural, it's very agricultural.
East Palo Alto is an anomaly in the urban sprawl of Silicon Valley. Surrounded by wealthy towns like Atherton and Menlo Park, East Palo Alto is one of the poorest communities on the peninsula. 20,000 people live here, a mixture of blacks, Hispanics, and some whites and Pacific Islanders. It is a small town struggling with big city problems. Unemployment is rampant, approaching 30%. Nearly 70% of the area's teenagers drop out of high school, and street corners are crowded with young men hanging out. The budget is so small, the town can't afford enough police officers or provide recreation programs for kids. There are few businesses in town, mostly liquor stores and barbecue joints clustered in the Whiskey Gulch area next to the Palo Alto border. The Nairobi Mall, the one shopping center in town, closed nearly 2 decades ago. But for years it sat empty, a crumbling, boarded-up eyesore where drunks and drug addicts gathered to kill the day. The city finally knocked the shopping center down a year ago, leaving this empty lot in the middle of town, as empty as City Hall's bank account.
I think it's probably the most vulnerable town in San Mateo County.
San Mateo Supervisor Tom Nolan's district includes East Palo Alto.
I'm told that about 5% of the population at any given time is involved in the criminal justice system, which is an extraordinary number, a higher percentage than some of the major cities that are often associated with the crime across the country.
A friend of mine visited once from New York, and they said that they were amazed. They've never seen anything like it in their life. They had gone from East Palo Alto on University Avenue through downtown Palo Alto to Stanford University. He said this is like going from the plantation to the headquarters or to the great house.
Elena Bex is the daughter of longtime East Palo Alto activist Ed Bex. As head of the local chapter of the Rainbow Coalition, she's convinced that East Palo Alto has been treated as a stepchild by San Mateo County.
Being a stepchild is perceived as someone taking care of you in a very minimal way, and yet you having no input at all. And that's basically kind of been the relationship, and to a certain extent, it is the relationship today.
So I think cities and counties are like people in that you can't begin to repair and rebuild yourself until you admit you've got a problem. And so there was some pride on their part, and in our case, there was probably what I would call what Senator Moynihan referred to once as almost benign neglect. People didn't want to think about it. So long as the problem was over there, there was a lot of neglect.
You see, the good part about the 50s, any problem we had, we could blame on white folks. Now, they didn't like it, but who cares? And we got to stop getting white folks' approval before we can blame them for something. Yes, you're right. I read. My son, that boy reads so fast. He said, Dad, how come I read so fast? White folks, boy. Damn white folks. Dad, I just went through this book. In fact, white folks, boy. But we can't blame white folks for nothing now. We are strong enough. We just don't have the unity.
All these kids right here, hey, y'all want some weed? I give you some weed.
Yes, I'm gonna make it.
They're
going to be doctors and lawyers. Little Peter right here is going to be a boxer one day.
Growing up here in East Palo Alto, I grew up in a home with drug addicts. You know, we used to have a lot of parties at my house. My dad was a heroin addict, and you know, I was involved with a lot of drugs since an early age. You know, from 10 years old, sniffing paint and sniffing gas, and going on to other things as marijuana. You know, coming to school, I couldn't keep up with my grades because I was, you know, my mind would always be somewhere else. And
Gilbert Jaimez, like 70% of his classmates, dropped out of high school. He felt neither academically nor socially prepared for the white, affluent high schools East Palo Alto teenagers attend in neighboring towns since the local high school was closed more than a decade ago. Gilbert was lucky. He changed his ways when he gave his life to God and kicked his crack addiction. He now is a campus aide at a local school, helping kids who have the same problems he did.
What I want to do here is just be their friends, just be somebody that, you know, I went through what a lot of these kids are going through, and they got good minds. But what it is they come to school and they see how messed up their schools are, and it kind of discourages them. So sometimes, they feel kind of bad.
We are just as good as any of the schools across 101.
Dr. Charlie May Knight is superintendent of the Ravenswood School District.
I feel that East Palo Alto, the Ravenswood School District, does an exceptional job with youngsters who come with a myriad of needs that society hasn't even attempted to address. Sometimes the only meal that they eat is when they come to the school. Society hasn't addressed that. Children who come to you where there is no authority in the house. You have children who are living in homes where crack are active of soul, where children are living in homes where parents care more about the pipe than they do about their own children. But on the other hand, somehow or another, as a school district, we have to not only empower those youngsters to cope with their own situation and at the same time say to them, but when you come to school, we want you to learn like everybody else.
East Palo Alto school kids score well below the average in standardized tests, but successful programs do exist.
And then stretch, breathe, and stretch.
The school district has just opened a daycare center for babies born addicted to drugs and alcohol. The center helps the babies overcome their developmental disabilities, giving them a chance at coping when they enter school.
I'm cruising along in my nickel-plated micro cruiser. Where am I going to be sucked into your little green hole there?
Another successful program is a special school ordered into existence by the courts. The Flood School requires students to perform at a high level just to stay enrolled. The academic atmosphere, state-of-the-art science and computer labs, and mandatory parent involvement in operating the school attract upwardly mobile parents who otherwise might send their kids to school outside of East Palo Alto.
The school district, in my opinion, does not have a curriculum that's tailored to meet the needs of the students in this city.
Sharifa Wilson is a teacher at Shule Mandela Academy, a private school. She thinks the majority of kids in East Palo Alto schools are being shortchanged, that her private school is a model the public schools should follow.
Pyramids. We have small classes. We have a maximum of 15 students per class so that we can identify the children's weaknesses and develop an individual program to meet those weaknesses. It is true that many of our students come from homes where they don't get any support in terms of homework or any kind of academic assistance. We have parents who will never go up to the school for open school. But the school district, where we differ, is that the school district's solution to the children not returning homework is not to give homework. Our solution is to create an after-school program where they can get the homework done. And that's what needs to happen in our school district.
When people say these youngsters just come in, put in time, that's not the case because we have some excellent teachers here, but they are teaching under insurmountable odds. East Palo Alto and the Ravenswood School District are a microcosm of what is going to happen statewide and nationwide as the new pool of students that are coming into the public schools will be and are quantitatively different than any youngsters that we've had in the past.
But according to Gilbert Jaimez, the schools are losing the battle for the kids.
When they're on the streets, they're walking home from school, they get out of school, they're back in East Palo Alto. They see the drug dealers driving around with Mercedes-Benz. They see all the nice gold that they have, and they see all that. It attracts them. They see the easy money they can make. Somebody will come up to them and say, hey, if you sell this, you can make a quick money. Why go to school, they think? You know, they go to school and get bored sometimes, and if they can just stay here and party, hang out with their buddies and drink and make money, you know, that's eventually, you know, it attracts a lot of our teenagers over here.
And my whole family dances.
Keeping kids off the streets and out of the drug culture is the biggest battle in East Palo Alto. The city and the schools can't afford to run cultural and recreation programs, so that task often falls to citizens like Matias Varela. Varela is the director of Raíces de Mexico, a Mexican folk dance group of 62 people. The dance group strives to build cultural pride in both kids and adults. Varela believes providing alternative activities like this is critical in combating the lure of the street.
Our basic philosophy is to encompass as many people as possible and to make the community aware that there is beautiful things out there besides drugs and the mentality of a taco truck type Mexican. Kids keep coming because they feel good about it. They feel good about themselves. I don't think there's one person in this dance group that has any type of intent of ever being involved with the drug trade or anything like that. What we export and what we use is culture. And I think fighting those types of bad influences on kids, on ourselves and the community and stuff, I think that's the best way to do it is through culture.
Role models. There's a black role model. There's a black role model. There's a black role model. All y'all are black role models. And that's all your children have to see is see you. Why they have to see Eddie Murphy? Okay? Why they have to be role models after somebody that can take a damn football and outrun Jesus on Saturday? That ain't role models. Why do we determine that somebody else going to determine who my role model is? How come it can't be my sister?
Pues fácil yo no creo que sea, ¿ve? Tener un negocio aquí en East Palo Alto. Por tanta droga, por tanta gente que anda en la calle.
Wilfrano Ruiz owns a bar and Mexican restaurant along University Avenue. His parking lot is a gathering ground for drug activity.
Sino todo el lugar es.
¿Cómo dónde?
Pues todo el lugar, como todo está baldío. Por eso toda la gente ahí se amontona.
¿Y qué hacen?
Bueno, ¿qué hacen? Pues yo pienso que venden ahí drogas.
¿Y qué hace la policía aquí en cuanto al problema?
Pues retirarlos, esculcarlos, llevárselos los que les agarran la droga. No, ahora está mejor. Ya parece que se va limpiando todo.
No city in America is handling the problem right now that crack cocaine has fostered on the United States. No city, including D.C., Los Angeles, none of the cities. So we're just in the same ballgame.
Police Chief Dan Nelson says complaints about shootings and open drug dealing on East Palo Alto streets have been going on for decades.
I pulled some newspaper clippings that came back from 1972, and essentially the same thing was being said at that time. The only difference, the drug has changed. At that time, it was heroin and marijuana. But this area, and you know, anytime an area gets a reputation, it kind of feeds on itself. It perpetuates itself.
The police department is heavily criticized for not clearing drug dealers off the streets. At the time Mrs. Roddy was shot, East Palo Alto could afford to field only 3 patrol cars at a time. Officers often handle 15 to 20 calls per shift, making it difficult to do follow-up investigations. Police detectives grapple with more violent crime per capita than in any other city on the peninsula. And they do this with fewer police officers than anywhere else comparable in the Bay Area.
If you look back 2 years ago, we had to lay off people. The police department took about 5 steps backwards from where we originally were. So if you look at that combined with the explosion of crack cocaine, it happened about at the same time. And all of a sudden it just went wild. There's no doubt about that.
East Palo Alto suffers from not having enough money. East Palo Alto was not a city at all until 1983, and many doubted whether a town with no industrial base could afford to incorporate and operate basic services. The jury is still out. In 1987, the town laid off 38 workers, including 12 police officers, reducing its payroll by more than 40%. Needed programs for recreation and alcohol and drug abuse were decimated, and housing and road improvement projects slashed.
This is a community that is struggling to get a hold of its own destiny.
Stan Hall is East Palo Alto's city manager. He contends the city must grow before more police officers or city programs can be added. His solution is an ambitious and controversial redevelopment plan aimed at doubling East Palo Alto's budget through taxes on new industry and at creating new jobs. Projected development ideas for large sections of the town include a hotel and convention center, a regional shopping center with a discount department store, movie theater, and car dealerships, and an electronics industry research and development plant. But so far, it's all a dream.
I think that what we have to do is not look at redevelopment as the panacea for the resolution of the problems of the community, but look at it as one of many different efforts that are being generated to bring the city into a sound physical and fiscal operation.
Opposition has already sprung up. Businesses and homes in the redevelopment areas would have to be moved, and it could be 5 years or more before the town's budget sees any new money. Opponents fear it is a step toward gentrification that will move poor residents out.
For every 3 jobs we develop, we'll be lucky if one of those jobs are East Palo Alto jobs. So just developing East Palo Alto does not guarantee the development of East Palo Alto jobs.
There's a fear of redevelopment in the sense that people automatically think about displacement. We can be creative in the types of programs that are here in this community. And so the redevelopment process should be tailored so that it can benefit the people that are living in this community. And that can be done through the redevelopment process.
Did you know he's a heavy load carrier? Did you know he's a heavy load carrier? Did you know he's never been late? Did you know he's never been late?
While the arguments rage over the future of the town, citizens are taking action. The crack problem won't be solved by a small police department and a struggling city government. People realize they must find the answers themselves by letting crack dealers and crack users know drugs won't be allowed anymore on East Palo Alto's streets. And if neighborhood rallies with gospel music and testimonials are what it takes to get the message out, that's what they'll do.
Thank and praise God for being delivered for 5 long years. I was a cocaine addict for a long time, and I was crazy. I lost my mind. I didn't have no sense of direction, no guidance in my life, but Jesus gave me another chance, and I'm going on with the Lord. So come on with me and go on with Jesus. Thank you, Lord.
Some of the drug dealers that's hanging around on the street, they seem to move when people come in and start talking about the Lord, and even the drug users, you know, they begin to kind of move down the block a ways, you know.
I just come out and do it myself. If I see them out here, I just tell them. I've had cars parked right here and walk down there, you know, to pick up drugs. And I just tell them, you can't, if you want to do business down there, you go down there and park your car down there. Don't park it in front of mine.
I had one lady call me the other night and said that there was a house close by her where they were selling drugs, and the lady was renting, and and the neighbors got together and asked her to move, and they felt good about it because they stood up and they made the lady move out, so the drugs aren't being sold on their street anymore, and that's good.
After years of frustration, the perception in town today is that things are getting better.
But I sat here today to tell you that I can use my backyard. I have my grandchildren this morning was making a garden in the backyard. The 2-year-old and the 3-year-old was making a garden in the backyard, and 6 months ago I wouldn't have allowed that at all, because my yard was actually used as a thoroughfare where they'd be running back and forth from one street to the other. Either the drugstores would be running at each other, or the policemen would be running back and forth.
The San Mateo County Sheriff's Office now patrols part of East Palo Alto, increasing police presence. Crack dealing on the street has fallen off, and the crime rate has dropped in half, at least for now. But everyone worries this just might be a lull before a summer storm.
Whatever kind of services that's here now will have to continue. We really don't need another quick fix. That is that when all the pressure is off, then we go back business as usual.
For County Supervisor Tom Nolan, the key is East Palo Alto becoming more self-sufficient.
Because there's no way that the county can continue to provide out of our general fund reserves the kind of support we're suggesting. And in fact, that's not going to be enough anyway. East Palo Alto has simply got to make a go of it.
Fear and God don't occupy the same planet. Y'all got to organize this community. The whole world is waiting. There'll be the path here. The President of the United States got a drug czar, and they can't stop nothing because they don't understand love. You can.
Production and broadcast of the preceding KQED special report was made possible through the generosity of the members of KQED and the additional support of contributors to the KQED Local Program Fund. If you have comments about the program you've just seen, we'd like you to share them with us by calling at 553-2100. Our comments line again, 553-2100. Please do give us a call. Excerpts from the San Francisco Film Festival are coming up in just a moment here on Channel 9. It's a movie called Voices in Exile, Immigrants and the First Amendment. Then at around 12:10 tonight, the movie Seize the Day, starring Robin Williams and Jerry Stiller. The Other Side of the Freeway is going to be shown again Sunday night at 11 o'clock, followed by The Race Against Crack at 11:30. The program, in case you missed it, was held in conjunction with the Glide Memorial Church, an examination of the crack problem. Now here, a look at a program you'll see this Sunday night at 9.
Next time on Traffic.
If you think that you are any match for me, then you're very much mistaken. I do not lose.
Tariq Bach is preparing to buy the opium harvest again. I think we can trap him red-handed.
No! No hand! When does it stop? When one of your children is dead?
Traffic on Masterpiece Theater.
Part 2 of this Masterpiece Theater presentation can be seen this Sunday night at 9 o'clock. And in case you missed it, we'll be re-showing Part 1 of Traffic this Sunday at noon. Here on member-supported Channel 9, KQED, San Francisco. That program's coming up next in about a minute. First, though, a look at two programs you'll be seeing this Friday night here on Channel 9, the first of which comes your way at 9 o'clock in the evening.
I shall resign.
16 years after he resigned the presidency in disgrace, Richard Nixon has proclaimed 1990 as his year of renewal. Can America forgive him?
The president's primary responsibility, among many others, his primary responsibility is to enforce the law of the land. And I did not effectively do that, and I had to pay the price for it.
Watch the American Interest special Richard Nixon Reflects with host Morton Kondracki.
You can see Richard Nixon Reflects Friday night at 9 o'clock and then at 10:30.
For a different view of our nation's capital, watch Of Monuments and Myths, a tongue-in-cheek look at the strange history and legends surrounding a number of Washington, D.C.'s best-known monuments.
You can see that lighthearted look at Monuments and Myths this coming Friday night at 10:30. And don't forget, there's a Mark Russell comedy special coming your way in just 1/2 hour.
Mark Russell with another comedy special coming your way on public television. Yes, George Bush has a 70% approval rating. Yes, communism is crumbling in the Soviet Union and the borders are opening up in Europe. But this is not the time to relax and cut back on our jokes. We must remain strong. There is still plenty to laugh at. So don't let all of this good news make you depressed.
You'll see that Mark Russell comedy special just 1/2 hour from now here on member-supported Channel 9, KQED, San Francisco. The following program was recorded Friday night. Production and broadcast of This Week in Northern California is made possible through the generosity of the members of KQED and the additional support of contributors to the KQED Local Program Fund.
And welcome to This Week in Northern California. I'm Ginger Casey. The week started with Earth Day, a day in which more than 200 million people around the world turned out to celebrate the planet and remember how fragile her resources are. But hands that were joined on Sunday were clenched into fists on Monday as radical environmental activists took to the streets to protest Earth Day hype and what they called corporate Earth rapists. Power lines were downed and demonstrations turned ugly. It was also a week in which the world of smoke and mirrors of professional political consultants came to light, and in which the devastation of the crack epidemic in the African American community was at the forefront of the news. Has it become a war on drugs or a war on blacks? Our panelists tonight, Hank Plant of KPIX TV, Spencer Michaels of KQED TV, Jerry Roberts of the San Francisco Chronicle, and Evelyn White, also with the Chronicle. Well, first up, the term is fairly new, but if the current trend continues, we better get used to it. It's eco-terrorism, the use of violence and vandalism to protect the Earth's resources. Now, Hank Plant, you have been covering this week's unfolding series of events. Is this an obscure, radical group behind all of this, or is it part of a larger movement that we may not know about?
I don't think anybody knows. Certainly the noise means more than the numbers at this point. I mean, how many people does it take to topple a power line and then get on the front page? It is a movement that seems to be growing. This new kind of radical edge that has been brought to the environmental movement is definitely growing. We've had 3 incidents this week. We had the Pacific Stock Exchange protest, which started out as a protest and then became an angry mob with people throwing rocks at police. The DA is going to prosecute, burning newsstands on the sidelines. We had the Golden Gate Bridge scaling at their own peril, people trying to unfurl a banner on the environment. And then, of course, we had the Watsonville incident, Watsonville, Santa Cruz, where power lines were toppled. 92,000 very innocent people who had just been through the earthquake lost power. The public is definitely miffed. People we stopped on the street and talked to said they've had it. Even people who were sympathetic to the environmental causes, some of them are pushed over the other way now.
Is this going to set back the environmental movement?
Don't know the answer to that, Ginger. we're all going to watch that happen. I mean, did the Black Panthers set back the civil rights movement when they moved it to the left, or did they edge it along? Is ACT UP setting back the AIDS activist movement, or are they getting something done when they shut down the FDA? A lot of this certainly relies at the feet of Earth First, which is this 10-year-old environmental group, kind of a radical environmental group that has admitted to doing tree spiking, pouring sand in bulldozers.
But they have given up tree spiking. They have said they aren't going to do tree
Well, no,
spiking
not all
anymore.
of them. Not all of them.
Most of them have, and they think the reason they're doing it is because they were getting a bad name and they wanted to make some progress. And they have made some progress. Well, I think the answer to your question is no, that these people are not going to stop the environmental movement.
I'll tell you, Spencer, I interviewed one of the co-founders of Earth First who was very open with me this week, a man named Mike Roselle, who said that they're not backing off on any of their strong positions. He said that they're tired of the kind of milquetoast environmental events. Peter, Paul, and Mary singing at Crissy Field isn't going to change the environment. And I asked him about toppling power lines. He denied having direct involvement, but he said...
At the same time, he was the co-author of a manual that talked about how to monkey wrench the power system.
Absolutely.
How to take those lines down.
Absolutely, and what he said was, you know, if people at Chernobyl would have toppled power lines a few years ago, maybe we would have a few hundred square miles left of the Ukraine today.
Hey, you know, I'd like to go back to a point you made a couple minutes ago about the parallels you see between this and the civil rights movement. It's interesting, one of the actions they're talking about, I mean, I believe it's Earth First, is this Mississippi summer in the Redwoods up in the North Country. Well, I mean, how do you read that? Are we in store for a long, hot summer in the Redwoods? Are people up there upset about it?
I think the game has changed, and it's not just this summer, Jerry. Yes, I think that we are in for a long, hot summer. I think that Mother Earth has spun left. And we've got to pay attention to that. Security consultant, ex-CIA guy, who we use on my channel as an interview subject, pointed out this week, he said there's no way to protect power lines, oil pipelines, the water supply, and he would not be at all surprised to see more actions like this.
Many of these people are taking their lessons from the civil rights movement and the student movement. The students weren't really listened to until they went in and threw the blood on the draft files.
Definitely. It reminds me of a phrase that Frederick Douglass, I believe, said, that those who ask for change without upheaval are like someone who would expect crops to grow without plowing the soil. And I think that for sure, my sense of it is that these activists are here to stay, that they are fed up, that they have taken their lessons from the civil rights movement and other activist movements, and they're getting the attention now that they hadn't gotten before. And certainly people criticize Dr. King for mobilizing people, wanted them to get back on those buses, you know, go slow, you know, things will be okay. And we see now that people don't think that things are going to be okay, and they're going forward with their own agendas, their own plans.
You know what else they've got? They're talking politics, too. They're talking a political party.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Greens, which take their cue not from the American civil rights movement, but from the European Greens and the German Green Party, is developing some following. I don't think it's very big. I don't think it's very important.
But there's no question that this is going to be like one of the main driving issues in this state this year. You have this big green initiative that's going to qualify this week. It's going to be
qualified today.
And there's another one on the forest, Protect Our Forest, which is going to be aimed for the fall. The growers in the valley are putting up their alternative to it. The gubernatorial candidates are getting involved and taking positions on the thing, and I think it's just going to continue.
But in terms of the eco-terrorism, is the media, are they feeding into all of this? I mean, are we giving them the front page
Absolutely,
and kind
absolutely.
of encouraging them to go out and do it again?
The Earth First fellow who was at the top of the Golden Gate Bridge was up there with a cellular phone giving a live report to KCBS radio, while his people on the ground were handing out press kits with backgrounds about Earth.
Yeah, but on the other hand, that's fine. But on the other hand, the Maxim company, which owns Pacific Lumber, which is trying to combat these people, also has a great big PR firm handing out the same kind of press kits on the other side. So it's both sides.
But what about when the newspaper publishes an article on how you can take down the system?
I think that was poor judgment.
Yeah,
I truly do.
We brought this in. The Examiner. I happen to like the Examiner, incidentally, but yeah, when they listed their outline of how to take down the system, I think it brought a lot of people back this week.
Is that why we got two people from the Chronicle?
Yeah, sure. You know, there's one kind of last point that I wanted to say about this, which is what might make it different from, say, the civil rights movement and from the AIDS activist movement, and that is, who is an environmentalist? You see? I mean, people at the Sierra Club are saying, hey, we don't know who these Santa Cruz people are. Maybe it's somebody with a grudge against PG&E. In 1976, members of the Manson family threatened to kill executives at the Sierra Club because they thought the Sierra Club execs weren't doing enough to protect the redwoods. The Manson family became environmentalists. Okay?
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, making the correlation between Dr. King didn't threaten anybody physically. And when you knock out power to 100,000 people, there are a lot of people on life support.
There were certainly people in Montgomery who felt that blacks were taking away their economic life. The same thing in South Africa you're seeing. People upset because of the boycott. And I think that there is a similar threat there.
But these are people who have already been impacted so heavily by the earthquake down there. The one
I'm not
quote
saying I agree
that
with
I
it.
thought was so unbelievable was the person who said, "We don't need to know what it's like to be without power down here. We get the point."
There's distinctions, though, here. I mean, I think where there's a danger in sort of lumping this all together is eco-terrorism, which is a great media word. I mean, there's an organization called Greenpeace, which is probably the largest environmental group in the world, which carries on sort of nonviolent eco-theater. And I think that is distinctly different from knocking down power lines or even climbing the Golden Gate Bridge. So I think that there are certainly degrees of these things. And keep that in mind.
All right, thanks. Well, thanks, Hank. Well, what gets lost in the medium is quite often the message. And does the message have any merit on this, Spencer? They're going after what they claim to be corporate Earth rapists, and their contention is that big business is cashing in on all this Earth Day hype.
Well, I think in that they're probably right. Big business is cashing in on Earth Day hype. I don't know whether the corporate rapist line is appropriate to this, but there was a lot of concern after Earth Day, before Earth Day, about corporations, use this old 60s term, co-opting Earth Day. The thing that really annoyed a lot of people, this is a Newsweek magazine from a week ago. They have this special supplement on Earth Day, special advertising section. And here's this ad in this Earth Day section that says, "Every day is Earth Day with nuclear energy." I mean, this just burned people up. They were so mad about this, and I'm talking people all over the spectrum. The real radical environmentalists thought that this whole section in Newsweek was put out by Newsweek and was sponsored by the Earth Day people. The Earth Day people said that isn't true at all. They didn't have anything to do with this section. I mean, here's the New Yorker. This is last week's New Yorker. They got a great big ad for Earth Day, also a special advertising section. They got an ad in here for a car, the Acura, an IBM, which has been criticized for pollution down in the South Bay, has a big ad in this section. So there's no question that corporations, some of them regarded favorably by environmentalists, some of them regarded not so favorably by environmentalists, have gotten on the bandwagon. Everybody is an environmentalist today. Everybody in the corporate world and everybody in the political world. You know, Dianne Feinstein and John Van de Kamp now are vying. Feinstein has endorsed Van de Kamp's big green initiative. It's
But who's going to stand up and say they're opposed to the environment? Really, it's very safe politically to align yourself with this.
Well, the hard thing is to figure out who's the real environmentalist and who's talking, quote, the green line. I don't know how you do that as just an average person.
But, you know, don't you think, though, that there is something beyond mere opportunism, and clearly there's a lot of that on the part of corporations. Don't you think that to some extent that there are market and political forces which are causing some corporations to make real changes? This Conoco thing with the double-held tankers to try to prevent it. IBM, which you mentioned, going to cut on their CFCs.
Cut down CFCs. Hewlett-Packard's going to cut down CFCs. Arco and Shell.
Heinz Company protecting tuna.
And that's a real change from 20 years ago.
And Chicken of the Sea is coming out with a new logo in which I understand the mermaid will be swimming with a dolphin.
Chicken of the Sea, wait a minute. Chicken of the Sea and Bumblebee Tuna are not off the S list yet.
That's right.
Those two companies, those two outfits, Earth Island, which is the environmental group that pushed the big changes in tuna and not so they won't kill the dolphins, is still angry at Chicken of the Sea and Bumblebee, and they think they have leverage with these corporations to go in there and get them to do something. So this meeting of environmentalists and corporations is kind of happening today.
And I think Jerry's right on target. Can you imagine the scrambling that is going on right now in the corporate boardrooms from McDonald's on down on what do we do with this styrofoam? How do we find a better way?
How do we make ourselves look good?
Do you know what McDonald's is doing? McDonald's has got McRecycling.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yes. Now, what they're going to make tables and counters and restaurants out of it, right? That's the plan.
Out of the hamburgers. Out of the hamburgers.
To which the Earth Day people told me, look, they can say that all they want. The glad bag people, but they shouldn't be making the styrofoam in the first place. They're just jumping on the bandwagon and say they're going to make baseball bats out of styrofoam.
But isn't that the way of the world? You know, one of the points that was made on the program last week was it's corporations in Madison Avenue always does this. They get, when they're being chased out of town, they get at the front of the line and they say it's a parade.
But you know what, Ginger? The public is very sophisticated on this subject, and all of these so-called changes and ad campaigns are being put under a lot of scrutiny, the McDonald's thing on up. Even these stock funds, which are pretty obscure for a lot of people, are under heavy scrutiny. These ecologically safe stock funds are now being criticized by the other stock funds that really are ecologically safe.
And one woman is suing one of those environmental mutual funds on the basis that they violated the prospectus.
I think it's great. I think it's great that the public is calling these corporations to account and making them stand up and show where they stand on this green issue, and whether it's sincere or maybe just a little show for now. I think it's good. I think it's good to have everybody talking about this.
There's a big split on what you say, though. There are some people in the environmental movement who think that that's a terrible idea, that we should pound on the doors of corporations and get rid of them. And there are some people, Gaylord Nelson, who founded Earth Day, said he thinks that it ought to be like a church. A church would be a terrible place if they didn't let any sinners in. They'd go out of business in 6 months.
True.
And he says that's the same thing with the environmental movement. They've got to let the corporations in and let them, try to reform them while they're in there.
100%.
Well, okay, thanks, Spence. Well, besides Madison Avenue, many of these companies are also employing the use of spin doctors, as they're called, political consultants who live in a world of smoke and mirrors. Now, Jerry Roberts, that world is certainly unfolding in the San Francisco ballpark scandal.
It is, in fact, Ginger. You recall that great American Richard Nixon once described Watergate as a third-rate burglary. In much the same way, this ballpark scandal started as a very kind of low-rent, cheesy thing, but it's taking on much broader political implications. And the latest episode in this sort of civic soap opera took place this week with the release of about 1,000 pages of grand jury testimony, and some of it's political dynamite. There's some evidence that raises some very interesting questions about the role of District Attorney Arlo Smith, who's running for Attorney General, and whether or not he was being led around by the nose by Mayor Art Agnos. But I think in a broader sense, the really fascinating stuff is this testimony by political consultants about how the political system really works. These consultants have become a major force. They're like the new political bosses in politics in the last 5 or 10 years. And I think people are just now beginning to take a look at the way that they operate and the kinds of things they do. And I think, frankly, the grand jury indicting 5 people in this ballpark thing on really pretty small potatoes charges is sending a signal that they didn't like what they heard in that grand jury room.
What do they do?
Well, there was a lot of testimony about this specific case, and it involves, as you know, a man named Greg Lukenbill who wants to bring sports to Sacramento, and how he raised some money and enlisted the aid of some local consultants to form a phony committee to defeat Agnos's ballpark plan last fall. So there was a lot of testimony about why they created this committee to avoid dealing with the actual real people who were opposed to the ballpark. They could just sort of conveniently do it on their own, how they kind of were very quietly, tried to keep the money quiet because they knew it would become an issue. And a lot of things just kind of about this, the way it works. These fees that are kind of unregulated, they can charge as much as they want. They get 15% commission on everything that they produce, including the postage, which is a nice kind of thing to have.
Well, nobody has to hire them, though. What's wrong with that?
Nobody has to hire them, but everybody does, and that's the fact. And the more that money has come to dominate the political system, the more the system has been taken over by these kind of technocrats.
What do they get for the money?
What they get is they get a lot of advice about how, I think, not to take issues. I had an interesting conversation a couple weeks ago with one of these guys, and he said, 10 years ago, he would take a liberal Democrat, and they would sit down and they'd have to talk all night about just put your principles aside and you can do whatever you want when you get elected. And he said, now the guy comes in and says, what do you want me to do? What do the polls say? What do I have to show? So I think, a lot of it is just kind of
like that
positioning.
line in The Candidate at the end of the movie when Robert Redford turns to Peter Boyle and says, what do we do now?
It's terrible.
Exactly.
What can the public do? I mean, what should we do
I'm not sure there's a problem, though.
Oh, I think it's a problem.
Spencer,
You've got people dishing money and saying, do this, say this, you want a
governor's
ballpark?
race this year is going to cost $60 million. Tell me that's not a problem.
That's a problem. I would agree. But we're talking about the little ballpark issue in San Francisco.
Which I think is just kind of a microcosm of the whole thing. I think it particularly is important in these initiative campaigns. I think, let's put the candidates aside for a moment. But what happens is, I think both locally and on a state level, you have very often one or two guys or a small firm or something that's promoting these things, a special interest that can raise a lot of money through direct mail or whatever mechanism they have.
So knows marketing very well.
Knows marketing very well and can drive these initiatives. There's not necessarily any public policy discussion. There's no debate about whether these things are good or not. What we have is just kind of an exchange of mailers, an exchange of ads, and I'm not sure that the public interest is being served.
Doesn't it work this way? You would know this. The initiatives can raise almost any amount of money they want, right, as opposed to a candidate. Yes. And then candidates can attach themselves to the initiative, as Vandy Camp has on Big Green, go around the state, be identified with it, have all of these bills picked up.
Yes.
All right, we're talking about this. Let's
like
get
voodoo. It's like
what
voodoo. I mean,
do?
how's the public supposed to know what's for real, where people stand? I think it's terrible.
It's funny how they discerned, though, on the insurance. It's really funny how they discerned the Nader insurance initiative from the others, you know, through all of it.
Yeah, I kind of go along with you. I think the public is smarter than these guys often give them credit for, and they do see through. As your point is, I think the question, Spencer, is how do you reduce the impact of money and special interests in the political system?
Without trampling on
the
First Amendment rights.
Without trampling
anybody has a free speech right. And
well, I think one thing that you can talk about or that can be debated and that is going to be debated is public financing of campaigns. And I think you can put more restrictions on the content of debate and so on in that sense.
We have been talking about public finance and campaigns since I was in college and probably before that, and that's at least 100 years ago.
Yeah,
and nothing ever happened.
Well, things are starting to happen. There was a man named Joe Montoya that got sentenced to 6.5 years in state prison this week, a state senator, and when he went on trial for taking campaign contributions and honorarium in exchange for votes, people said there's nothing to it. That's what goes on every day. Well, it is what goes on every day. And when the 12 people on that jury heard about it, they were totally offended, and they convicted him.
Yeah, I think people have had enough.
Some of the same thing happened in this grand jury.
Okay, but now we're talking, that's where I want to differentiate. Joe Montoya took money to get a bill through. That's illegal. That's a bribe. But in this situation, we're talking about hiring a consultant who's wheeling and dealing.
And maybe
I'm not sure it's the same ballpark.
Maybe there should be some laws that govern these consultants. I don't think
are
there
they accountable to anybody?
Well, no. The regulation is the Fair Political Practices Committee has rules about disclosure of campaign contributions and so on, which is alleged to have been
that's the not here in the Lukenbill case,
right? Which is it. And usually these cases are handled by the FPPC. They were handled by the DA's office for very political reasons.
What role would a political consultant play, say, in a governor's race? Are they the ones determining what the commercials are going to be about, that we're going to run the footage of Diane after the Mosconian milk killings?
It depends to a large extent on the candidates, and different candidates allow themselves to be handled to different extents. They are largely technicians. They are strategists, they are pollsters, they are people who prepare mail, and they are media experts. They are people who advise candidates about how to sell themselves as soap.
And they make very bad decisions. Remember Dukakis in the tank?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know,
sometimes they make very good decisions.
Sherry, one of the issues was that the press could easily be manipulated. That seemed to come out as part of the testimony of the grand jury. Can you be manipulated? Do you ever find yourself being manipulated?
I find myself that people are trying to manipulate me all the time, and I must say that there's a very symbiotic relationship between political consultants and political reporters, and I think that may in fact be part of the problem.
Well, weren't we in fact all manipulated when they hid or allegedly hid the source of that money?
Well, I think that's certainly what the district attorney, or what the grand jury feels, is that the voters were manipulated. This thing went out the Saturday before the election, you know. What a terrible time to build a ballpark with all this earthquake destruction. And it's, you know, there's a line on there about a committee that has filed no papers, that no one can find out who's behind it.
Including us.
Including
us.
But,
manipulated implies that we are being used against our will. And don't you think it's closer to the fact that we just use each other? Come on. I mean, the media and the campaigns, we both know exactly what we're doing.
Here we are.
Okay, well, on that note, we'll move it along. Evelyn, right after our program tonight, we'll be televising a town meeting on crack's epidemic in the black community. I know you have been covering the second annual conference going on. Fill us in on the latest. We've been hearing reports about how the war on drugs is becoming a war on the black community.
Well, as you said, for the second consecutive year, more than 1,000 people from all across the country have gathered in San Francisco to devise strategies to deal with the crack cocaine epidemic. Though there are people of all races, ethnicities at the conference, I think it's safe to say that most of the people attending the conference are black, that the issue really seems to have hit the black community the hardest. I covered the conference last year, and what I've seen today in terms of the conference and the issues is that they're really getting to the issue and recognizing that this is a problem that the black community has to deal with itself. Though certainly the community needs help from government officials, from therapists, from law enforcement officials, from educators. By and large, black people are realizing, hey, this is our problem. We are the ones ingesting these drugs, regardless of the reason for it, and we have to stand by each other and provide ways to help each other out. I find it very, very inspiring, very moving conference. Some very concrete things are getting done, and I think that this problem is definitely going to be dealt with.
We were talking a little bit before the program about how drugs are quite often a response to an existing problem.
Correct.
What would you say is the existing problem?
I would say that it's despair and a very low sense of self-esteem that I have noted in many, many black people in recent years. There's kind of a sense of defeatism, no place for us to go, a government that doesn't represent our needs, our issues, our concerns. I think that black people overall have been depressed for the past several years.
This creates a cycle.
Absolutely, a cycle of, well, I don't have anything to live for, I don't have anything to look forward to. Here's some drugs that are readily available in my community that will make me feel good, that will give me this euphoric high, and so that are inexpensive. Crack is very inexpensive, and so people are very vulnerable, very susceptible. And I think what people are trying to achieve at this conference, they're trying to say, listen, here's some role models for you. Here are some people who struggled through some hard times and have achieved and have accomplished their goals. You can be like them, you know, and giving them something to reach for.
Let me ask everyone a question. You said that the black people are the people who are most impacted by this, and they're the one who are ingesting the drugs, as you put it.
Yes.
And yet all the material that comes out from the conference and from the FBI and in the papers say, and black people are touting this as well, that the blacks are not the people who are ingesting the drugs. The 12% of the drugs are ingested by black people. That drugs are much more common in the white community than they are in the black community. Is putting a conference on dealing with the black impact sort of sending the wrong signal?
I don't think so at all. Of course, there are more white people who are using drugs because there are more white people in America. But if you look at it proportionately, given the numbers of black people in this country, by and large, more of them are using drugs and being, harmed by them. And I think it's not a good idea to move it away from the reality. And I think that there has been denial too long. I have covered this story for many years, and it has been black people saying to me, I can't go out of my house. There are drug dealers on the corner.
You don't hear too much about drive-by shootings in Pacific Heights.
And there may be them there, but there is no way to deny that this problem is epidemic in the black community.
This one is different. We have all been covering drugs for 15, 20 years. We've been doing drug stories. This one is different, and crack is different, and maybe you can articulate how it is, but it seems so much more
perhaps the most highly
insidious
addictive drug that's
really
ever come
ripping
along.
this country apart.
And also the generational.
It takes people out very quickly.
It takes, doesn't it? I mean, grandmothers and mothers and 3 or 4 generations.
Is it? I'm sorry.
I interviewed a couple of teenagers at an education center in Potrero Hill a couple of months ago, and the thing that got me was, that they were like trying to get their high school degree so that they could get a job, as one of them put it, washing buses at Greyhound for $4.50 an hour. Right. And she said, what is the sense in that for me? She was really asking herself, I can make a couple $100 a day selling crack, or I can make $4.50 an hour. I mean, is there any real hope beyond that?
And we're out of time, so, that is one of the issues that we'll be taking up at this town hall meeting that's coming up next. I want to thank you all for coming by and joining us tonight. We have been on tape tonight so that we can bring you the following program, which will be a live 2-hour town meeting on the crack epidemic's impact specifically on the black community. It's called The Race Against Crack, and I'll be hosting it with the Reverend Cecil Williams. And it will be followed by The Other Side of the Freeway, a documentary detailing how East Palo Alto is coping with their drug problem. So stay tuned, and I'll see you again in a few moments.
The irreverent political satirist Mark Russell will tickle your funny bone with hilarious songs, one-liners, and savvy piano parodies on his comedy special. It's next here on Channel 9. Then at 7:30, Roger Swain plants broccoli and cauliflower, and Jim Wilson discusses soil preparation for warm weather crops. It's the Victory Garden tonight at 7:30, followed at 8 o'clock by Nature.